Please be seated. Next is disclosure of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, we'll move on to matters from a closed session. Need a mover for Economic Development Advisory Committee appointment. Moved by Councillor Watton that Michael Philippe be appointed to the Economic Development Advisory Committee as the Chamber of Commerce representative. Any questions on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Next, now we've dealt with the closed matters, we'll move on to announcements from council and staff. Councillor Watton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to congratulate the Blackstock Nursery School for their very well-attended pancake breakfast. They served over 470 plates yesterday morning, so they were kept on their toes, but it was very well organized, and they did an awesome job.
Councillor Kett.
Thank you, Mayor. We just got notice that we got $92,000 for our cycling infrastructure. Special thank you for staff that helped out, Kevin, Carol, and everybody else. Thank you.
Councillor Somerville.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to give a note of thanks to the people who put the committees who put the Santa Claus Parade together on Saturday evening. I think it was one of the best Santa Claus parades I've ever seen. It was so well done. It sure put Toronto's Santa Claus Parade to shame because it was excellent. And so my congratulations to everyone who organized it, and to the chamber, and to everyone on the floats and the lions. It was the best parade I've ever seen. So congratulations.
And the milder weather certainly helped out, right? Any other announcements from council? I failed to mention that Councillor Guido had sent her regrets. She's unable to make today's GPNA meeting. And now looking at staff, any announcements from staff? Already one about the grant was noted. So, okay, next up, what we'll do is we're going to just, for the courtesy of those members, we're going to switch the presentation from Mr. Newman with the delegation. So I'd like to now call upon Mr. Doble from the Green Bay Community Association to come forward with your delegation. Just a reminder, you know about the button to be pushed for the microphone. You can move the gooseneck. It doesn't have to be really close. It'll distort if it's really close to your mouth, but you can certainly move in that direction. And also that you have 5 minutes to do your delegation, and I'll give you a warning if it's getting close to it and it doesn't appear like you're close to the end. Okay. Go ahead.
I think you all have the cover page that was sent. This is a grant application for it basically kick in next fall, 2018. The grant would be for $22,000. There's a requirement that the township agree to pay 20% of the grant, and you can see from the, I talked to the Michelle Pick, and you can see that $3,300 is allocated through auditing and liability and contents insurance, and also the township pays 50% of the elevator maintenance costs. So that's $3,300, and what we're looking for is the township to allow us to allocate $1,200 cash from the $3,500 that's given to the Greenbank Hall each year for operating costs. That would give us a total of $4,500, and that would allow us to apply for a $22,500 grant. So that's the reason for the $4,500. We can easily make up that $1,200 because I just recently had a former resident of Greenbank donate $2,000, and there were no restrictions on the donation. Some other information. The deadline for the grant is December 21st. A lot of organizations will not be able to meet that deadline, and so I'm hoping that the Greenbank Community Association will be very successful because I intend to get the grant in by December 21st. Also, if I do get the grant, then I will be contacting the Scugog Age Friendly Committee and work with them to select the senior programs that would be at the Greenbank Hall. And part of the grant is to do a survey with seniors prior to the actual programs to see which topics they would be interested in, and also an evaluation survey when the programs were done. We're looking at probably doing 8 workshops or sessions. Also, the reason that I'm applying for Greenbank is in order to get the grant, the programs have to be offered, those programs offered have to be new to that facility. And a lot of some of the programs that have been done in the township facilities could not be done again there. So it have to be new programs. That's about it. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thanks very much for undertaking this for the benefit of the seniors. Questions from council? Councillor Watton?
I think I know the answer, but perhaps the Director of Finance can just answer. The $3,500 for hall operations, is there any limitation on how that's used? Is there guidelines, or is it just up to the hall boards or the hall committees to use it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is just at the hall board's discretion.
I know at one time it used to be 50% for operations and 50% for capital, but we've kind of gone by the way.
Okay, Councillor Somerville?
Thank you, Larry. Nice presentation. And can you disclose any of what the new facilities that your new things that you're going to do in the facility?
I'm sorry.
You said you have to do some new projects in the facility.
Well, at the seniors, we had some sessions at the community center in Scugog, and we did fraud prevention, and we did estate planning and stuff like that, alternate housing. Well, none of those things have been done in Greenbank, so this is the key, that because we haven't done them in that facility, we're able to apply for the program as new material.
So it's for it's seniors programs.
Yeah, they're seniors programs.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Doble? All right, seeing none, we have Councillor Somerville has moved that the delegation by Larry Doble, Greenbank Community Association regarding the application for a seniors grant be received, and that the Township of Scugog agrees to provide 20% of the grant or $4,500 in cash or in-kind donations in 2018. Any questions on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And you probably need a copy of that, which you know the process to get that.
Okay, either J.C. or Michelle Pick.
Yep, they will have it for...
Send me a copy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, next up on the agenda, we have a delegation request from Mr. Howard Danson. If you could just please come forward to the same position, you know, the inner workings of the council chamber. So again, likewise, might be a different angle from that side, but I don't think anything's different. Maybe the microphone heads at 5 minutes, as you know, and I'll give you a warning when it's getting close, just so we keep on target, on task. So it's you have the floor, Mr. Danson.
Well, first of all, before I start, maybe you should tell you my presentation will probably take about 8 minutes.
8 minutes? Okay. So at
maybe if you want to allow me that, or...
So, moved by Councillor Kett, that it is at the discretion. Okay, so of 8 minutes, how about at 7 minute mark, I'll just give you the warning that...
It's fine. So before I make my presentation, perhaps I could just acknowledge the presence of 2 former councillors. John Hancock, the former councillor for Ward 2, and Larry Corrigan, the former councillor for Ward 1. John and Larry are quite familiar with what I'm going to present, Mr. Mayor. They're supportive, and they're very interested to hear what your response will be. So as I said, my presentation will take about 8 minutes. I'll be asking several questions as I go through the presentation. I prefer to leave the answers till the end, but we expect and hope that you will answer them all. So I'm here as a long-term resident and taxpayer of Scugog Township. That's my capacity here today. I want to talk about the expense claims for Mr. Kett, and in particular his mileage claims. A few months ago I wrote to the Port Perry Star about the annual council evaluation, and among other things I drew attention to the $6,101 that Mr. Kett had claimed for personal expenses in 2016. And I asked what the return on investment for the taxpayers of Scugog was. Frankly, Mr. Mayor, I would have left it at that, except Mr. Kett had the audacity to ask the township to pay for his potential personal legal fees of up to, and probably more than, $30,000 for him to try to clear his name from the bullying and the harassment allegations against him that were confirmed by the original Integrity Commissioner Elston. So because of Mr. Kett's request, under the Freedom of Information, I decided to ask for copies of his expense accounts since he became a councillor in 2014. So when I got the information a couple of weeks ago, I wasn't surprised to see that he had claimed mileage compensation of approximately $2,800 in each year, 2015, 2016. This was 13 times as much as any other councillor in 2015, and 34 times as much as any other councillor in 2016. So I wonder, Mr. Mayor, if that seemed odd to you. The previous council was given a set of guidelines for remuneration, expenses and benefits. These guidelines indicated that mileage shall be paid for councillors carrying out the business of the township, but mileage will not be paid for attendance at regular council and committee meetings. The guidelines indicate that mileage claims should be submitted on a monthly basis. So there seems to be some question whether this council actually utilized the same guidelines, but I know the staff implemented a new mileage reimbursement policy dated March 2017. So if the guidelines that I referred to earlier were not utilized between December 2014 to March 2017, perhaps you can tell me what documentation and criteria were used to evaluate expense claims during that period. In any case, I found that Mr. Kett submitted mileage claims for several months at a time instead of on a monthly basis. He charged 24 kilometers for attending Heritage, SEAC, EDAC, and other committees of council, sometimes charging for more than one mileage claim on the same day. Since these claims are for committees of council, I wonder why Mr. Kett thought he was entitled to this compensation when no other councillor appeared to claim mileage for these meetings. And again, Mr. Mayor, I'll ask you if you find that odd. It appears from the regular amounts claimed, 24 kilometers in many cases, that Mr. Kett charged mileage from his home to the township office and return each time he attended meetings there. For example, in 2016, out of 26 claims, 17 were for 24 kilometers at a cost of approximately $220. So, Mr. Mayor, can you tell me how many other councillors and or staff of this township are paid mileage for commuting from their home to their place of work? Do you know of any employee anywhere who is paid mileage from their home to attend their place of employment? Maybe you can tell me why Mr. Kett was the only councillor claiming this mileage. It's not my place, nor is it practical for me to verify the legitimacy of the meetings for which Mr. Kett claimed mileage. But as mayor of the township, it is your responsibility. On 2 occasions, Mr. Kett appeared to have charged mileage for attending golf tournaments at Oak Ridges and Deer Creek. I wonder if you think that's appropriate, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Kett charged mileage for attending various functions, such as Canada Day, Remembrance Day, the seniors' dinner, the mayor's levy, and a lot of others. According to the Municipal Act, Section 284, 1/3 of any remuneration paid to an elected member of council can be deemed to be for expenses incident to the discharge of his or her duties as a member of council, and is therefore considered non-taxable. So isn't the tax-free portion of Mr. Kett's salary, which probably is around $7,000, supposed to compensate for these kinds of events? Is there no public service aspect to being a councillor, or does Mr. Kett have to be compensated for every event that he attends? Let me turn to claims for mileage for attending the board meetings at the Kawartha Regional Conservation Authority in Lindsay. Just by accident, the finance manager happened to notice in March of 2017 that for 2 years Mr. Kett appeared to have been paid mileage from the Township of Scugog, as well as from the KRCA for attending these meetings. From January the 1st, 2015 to December 3rd, 2016, the township paid 15 claims for Mr. Kett when he had also claimed mileage from KRCA. The manager noted occasions when Mr. Kett claimed mileage when the records indicated that he was not at the meeting. And there were instances where Mr. Kett claimed mileage when there was no meeting, or when he carpooled with you, Mr. Mayor. So the finance determined that during this period, Mr. Kett claimed for 2,202 kilometers, totaling $1,189 of Scugog taxpayers' money to which he was not entitled. I'm not sure if this has been fully recovered from Mr. Kett, but I'm sure you know, Mr. Mayor, so perhaps you could tell me the date when this happened. Mr. Kett generally claimed 156 kilometers for attending KRCA meetings. According to Google Maps, the distance from this building to 277 Kenry Road in Lindsay is 47.7 kilometers, or 96 kilometers for a return trip. So you've driven this route a number of times, Mr. Mayor, and I wonder if you can tell me which of those is correct, Mr. Kett or Google Maps. I don't know what the mileage reimbursement process is at KRCA, so I wonder if you can tell me how you would account for the apparent 60 kilometers difference. Apparently you were away from the office when the double payments were discovered in March of 2017. Senior management discussed what action should be taken. There was an obligation to inform the auditors of possible fraudulent activity, and it was decided to ask for legal advice. The auditors indicated that since they considered the amount in question small, and the township had put in measures to avoid future issues, they were satisfied. The auditors seemed oblivious to all the other mileage that Mr. Kett had claimed that I mentioned earlier. I wonder if those significant dollar amounts were drawn to the auditor's attention. Mr. Mayor, did you speak with the auditors and the legal staff in the region about this very serious issue? And if you did, what did they say to you? Did they ask you if you had recovered all of the overpayment from Mr. Kett? I have a fairly extensive background in internal audit and operational review in the provincial government, Mr. Mayor. I know what we call this kind of stuff when we found it in our audits, and we found plenty. From my experience, I know how important it is that public officials dealing with taxpayers' money keep accurate, truthful, and legitimate records of transactions. In view of the points that I've raised today, are you satisfied that Mr. Kett did this? And have you spoken to Mr. Kett about it? You may recall that I wrote to you after your inaugural speech when you said you would run this council free of corruption. And I question your motive for that statement because of the implications towards the previous council, of which I and the two gentlemen sitting back here were members. Well, Mr. Mayor, here it is. There have been 2 instances of bullying and harassment charges confirmed by Integrity Commissioner Elston and in March 2017, senior management had to discuss possible fraudulent activity with the township auditors and lawyers. Mr. Mayor, in view of what I've just outlined, do you think the average taxpayer in Scugog would be happy to see that $5,600 of his or her tax dollars was spent on mileage claims by Mr. Kett in 2015 and 2016? A significant portion of it simply compensating him for driving to and from his home to the township office. Do you think that you should have scrutinized some of his claims more closely to make sure they were accurate, truthful, and legitimate? Or are you satisfied that all of Mr. Kett's claims were within the accepted standards for municipal councillors? I wonder if Mr. Kett knows or cares what a difficult position he's put you in, Mr. Mayor. What a difficult position he's put me in. And most importantly, what a difficult position he put a number of the township staff here in. At the very least, I believe an independent audit of Mr. Kett's expenses should be carried out, and any compensation that the audit determines he is not entitled to should be repaid to the taxpayers of Scugog and KRCA. That's my presentation, Mr. Mayor. But I would like to go through the questions if you're okay with that.
Okay, well, first, I want to thank you for your time in bringing, obviously, a serious matter here, which we want to be cognizant on any of the questions that you've brought up, whether they're allegations or not. So I don't want to get caught up into a situation which may put us into a legal situation, but I do want to address one thing, as you had said about me in the inaugural speech saying free of corruption. I don't think I've ever used corruption in any speech at all, so I do want to make sure and clear the air there that I've never in this term of council negatively said that, or in the inauguration said anything implying about corruption to the previous council, and I've been very respectful to the previous council. So I just want to make sure that air is clear, is that I have utmost respect for any public servant that held an office, a public office, and by no means have I ever said there was corruption or anything like that. I've been very respectful of that. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. If it wasn't clear in the past, that you know from me answering just this part there, that I've never once thought there was any sort of wrongdoing or corruption from a council point of view, from previous council. So now, just for questions here, you've asked a lot of questions. We do have a full agenda, and I don't think it would be efficient on time or fair to go through any of those questions, but I'm not saying that we won't give answers to those questions that you directed to me, to Councillor Kett. But I also just want to, in a overarching suggestion, to say that you've asked for an audit of claims. Many of the things that you brought up there that would need further investigation on because of the process required. Definitely concerns were brought up. You have freedom of information documentation there, a process unfolded from there, consultations, and then policies were put in place you had used the words about, you asked a question if it was fully reclaimed, and those costs were, where the discrepancies were noted, were fully reclaimed. So the ones in question have been cleared. So they've been paid back to the municipality, or they've been recovered to the municipality. I do want to stress that the policies now put in place are very black and white and clear, and that I would suggest that taking your concerns and your questions is that staff be suggested to come back with a recommendation of a proper process for next steps, with consultation with our outside professionals, whether it be the auditor. I don't know if there's any other reference that would be required, but you're asking a lot of questions and a lot of detailed. You're not going to want just an undetailed answer on it from today. So I'm going to open it up to other councillors to ask questions for you right now. I cannot advise them what to say and what not to say, but if it gets into a staff or a procedural process, I think we would need to come back with more wholesome answers on that, and I don't want you to feel like today is not an important delegation you've done, because I do take it very seriously, and process steps were taken at the time when we were changing or bringing forward the policy. So I recognize the predicament that you referenced that we were placed into, so including yourself, myself, staff, etc. So this time I will put it out to questions from council, and we'll go from there and see where we go.
Maybe I can just respond to you then, Mr.
Sure.
Like if you're not going to respond to me today, I'm not going to respond to you either.
Okay.
I mean, this has to be a two. I'm not here to kind of take questions.
No, I think it was not questions, maybe clarifications. Then just while you're here to get clarifications.
I'll be happy to clarify the staff with the staff sometime.
Okay.
But I'm not interested in taking questions from councillors.
Yep. Okay. Well,
I took the information. Like I have 180 pages.
Yeah.
Some of it was duplicate.
Yeah.
Some of it was very difficult to read. I can tell you, I had to check umpteen times. The one thing I didn't want to do was come here and make a statement that I didn't feel confident about.
Yep.
All of the stuff that I've talked about here, I've got from the documentation that I was provided under the Freedom of Information Act. It's a mishmash of all kinds of things. It's not clear. It would be very difficult for a lot of people to kind of understand it. There are duplicate pages of things that purport to be supporting documents for claims for mileage. There are many errors on them. When I say errors, there are different places, different number of kilometers on sheets that were duplicated. I don't know how the staff here discerned what the actual claims were. And certainly the mileage claims that we filled out when we were on council, I didn't see many of those at all in the information that I was given. So I'm disappointed you're not prepared to answer some of these questions.
Well, let me just clarify why that I gave the response I did. One is, you just said you had 180 pages from an FOI request. Well, I'm not privy to the information that you have, so a lot of things you referenced to that I don't have that information, so it would be really difficult for me to answer.
I haven't asked you to do anything specific to reviewing these. I've asked you questions like, did you think it was odd that Mr. Kett claimed 34 times as much as any other councillor in 2016? That's what I get from, there's a sheet of paper showing them, you know it, you know the sheet that I'm talking about. My question to you is, did you think that was odd?
And I think that to answer the questions that you've got there, because you went through in a delegation on them, and I tried to write down as many as I can, is that to give you a wholesome answer to it, I need to know more details of the stuff, because I'm not privy to the information that you have. So when you say it's odd, that's you giving information to me, so it's almost third-party information where I haven't had the liberty, the opportunity to do that. So if I had received your report or your Freedom of Information, if I had that information ahead of time, then I'd be able to answer that, to know what you're referencing, because I'm only getting the information that you've just said in your 10-minute presentation there for half of the information that you provided. I'm not privy to all that information. The FOI copy that you received didn't go to me. I don't have all that information. So I already, in an overarching comment, said yes, there were concerns, and then policies were tightened. So right now, that's what I'm prepared to give you, because I do take it very seriously, and we did make changes, and we did tighten up things, and yes, we did. Staff had drafted up a policy to make sure that we didn't have this going forward. Also, there was a requirement for those expenses to be reclaimed. So it is a concern, of course it is. And going from there, there's you're asking for an audit, and I think that requires a great deal of carefulness, because you don't want a non-arm's length person looking into it. I don't want to put staff into a precarious situation, so you have to understand that this isn't just something that we want to just not take lightly. It is serious concerns, and I don't know if you're alleging anything or not, but it is serious. And
I'm not alleging anything.
Okay.
I mean, Mr. Mayor, if you can't tell me right now, this is not, you don't need any information other than, is the 1/3 tax-free component of a councillor's salary supposed to compensate for certain events, to attend certain events in the township? I mean, you can tell me that now.
I can.
Do you agree with that, or you don't agree with that?
I can agree that there was a tax ruling from the federal government that allowed for 1/3 of councillors' salary to be.
We all know that, Mr.
Right,
Mayor.
so
what I'm asking you is, do you agree that that covers things like attending Canada Day and Remembrance Day and the Mayor's Levy and things like that? I mean, you don't need one of the things that the staff have done, and I commend them for it with the new policy, but like it says right there, nobody will get paid from their home to their office. Well, let me tell you, nobody needs a guideline or a policy to know that's not going to happen. That's why I ask you, tell me one other person in this township that gets paid that. Tell me one other person that you know anywhere that gets that. Those are not detailed things in my presentation. Those are quite, I mean, I'm quite disappointed, Mr. Mayor. I'm quite happy to leave it at this, if that's the way you want to leave it.
No, that wasn't what I was saying at all, not to leave it at that at all. I was saying that you've asked a great deal of questions on there, and a lot of it is pertaining to open-ended questions, which a personal answer on it may not be the answer that might be an answer that I'm not aware could be implicating something, and that's not what I want to do. And I can tell you that I was not at your term of council. I don't know what you received as an inauguration book. I don't know what the policies and guidelines you have. I can tell you it's been looked into, and I've looked at the 2014 council guideline and the book that was there in the presentation, and this is not just something that hasn't been looked at carefully. This has been looked at in great detail, and maybe not giving you all the information you want now, but I can tell you there's a great deal of consideration given into the process that was undertaken, and stand behind that process. And if you're asking for more, or this council may be asking for more, my suggestion is that if moving forward to deal with these concerns, because you brought up some that from your FOI request that I wasn't aware of, so I can honestly tell you that that it's something that I can tell you that was tried to be captured into a bylaw to make sure that it is spelled out there. Now, you may say, you said worked for the province, which may have had those rules set out, and versus the private sector. So I don't want to get into what's laws and legal, because I know from an accounting background that there's certain things you can't claim with the Revenue Canada, etc. So I don't know if that's common knowledge from everybody or not. I don't want to get into a situation where I'm accusing somebody or defending somebody. That's not what this public forum is for here. We want to make sure that this is proper processes are followed based on the expectations, based on the rules, the procedures, etc. So I'm telling you that your concerns are taken seriously, and we can continue from here. So if you're not prepared to answer questions from council...
Well, you're not prepared to answer mine, so why should I be prepared to answer yours?
You can't expect to come here in front of a council floor with 180 pages of document.
These are not detailed questions. These are not detailed questions, the ones I've asked you. I asked you questions like, did you speak to the auditors? Did you speak to the legal people? Mm-hmm. Did you ask them if Did they ask you if Mr. Kett had repaid all the money, and what was your answer?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't need to look at anything
I
that
can
I've
answer
done.
all three of those right there, yes, yes, and yes. Those
Okay,
are all but
and what was
three.
the date that he was fully recovered?
See, that, I don't have that in front of me, because I don't, from your delegation request, all it is one page, and it says, questions to recouncil expense accounts, audit of certain claims. That's all I have here, so I can't prepare for what you're gonna ask me before that, and I don't think it's fair for you to expect me to have dates and numbers. We're dealing with the GP&A meeting, and so, we have, you know, a motion here for your, reports, or your delegation regarding the council expense be received, and then anything that needs to come after that, then this council can direct the staff to do that. So, I don't want you to feel that you're not going to get answers to those questions. It's just you can't expect it to be here on the fly from me. Now, that's, if other councils want to ask questions from you and you're willing to answer them or to talk to, that's what I'm asking, if you're willing to entertain those questions.
I don't want to spend much more time on this, Mr. Mayor. I asked for under the Freedom of Information, I asked for it about 6 weeks ago. And there was a kind of like a 30-day, as you probably know, time when the township can respond. So JP responded in the 30 days, which was fine. Now it's taken me another 2 or 3 weeks to get on the agenda here. So like I've been looking at this stuff or thinking about this stuff for ages. So, you know, I've drawn it to your attention. I've drawn quite specific things to your attention. If you want to look into them, that's fine. If you don't want to look into them, that's okay too.
No, and I would like to have a copy of your report if you're willing to give me that with all the questions on it. So
no, if you're not going to do anything.
I didn't say I wasn't going to do anything. I don't know where you're getting that from what I'm saying to you. I'm quite willing to answer the questions you have. I've answered the ones there, but ones that require more back to my notes or back to the stuff, I need to go back and make sure I'm giving you not an answer off the cusp here. You got to understand and respect that I don't want to give you information that's documented by the media and it's public, it's recorded here, and it ends up when I go back to my notes that's not what I had said, or I don't have all that information here. You're at the liberty of having a prepared report presentation with 180 pages, and I don't have anything on it except for a one-page delegation request. So I'm quite willing to answer every one of your questions that you have on there and give it articulated response to it within a short time frame. Absolutely. I just don't want to give you information that I don't have the liberty of being able to go back and check. I answered those questions that were very easy for me to answer, but there were several questions that were much more in-depth and complex. So I value your time and your concerns and the public. I appreciate your coming here in the public and doing this. You know, it's not an easy undertaking, but I do feel that this is a serious enough matter that it's not just going to be quick answers to your questions. It would require a more in-depth one. You asked for an audit of certain claims. That audit, I wouldn't want staff to be doing that audit of claims, because I think that it should be an arm's length person that is looking into this. So that's why I came in here with a suggestion that says, based on thinking that you were going to suggest an audit for the claims, that staff come back with a date and a recommendation for the proper process and the next steps with consultations of our auditor, for example. And yes, you had asked if it was brought up with the auditors. Yes, it was, and it was in our public documentation that came to a council meeting in June, that it was in that documentation that it said that it was disclosed, and so that's all part of the public process that we have done. So, and I'm leaving it up to you if you're wanting to answer any questions or what you would like to see from this point forward, or if you just wanted to put it into the public forum like this. So,
I think I'll just leave it the way it is.
Okay. Councillor Drew?
Just a question. You made a suggestion that this be referred to staff. Was that correct?
Yeah, it was based on the delegation request of audit of certain claims. That's what the ask was, the action being requested from council on the delegation form.
Okay. My question is, it would be very difficult for our staff to suggest that external audit be done on their own employers. So I would suggest that staff get advice from legal at the region or our auditors on how we should proceed with the requests in this delegation.
And that's what I had said in here, staff come back with after consultation with
Okay.
the legal. So, but right now I have a moved motion, a delegation by Howard Danson regarding council expense accounts be received. So if you're suggesting that to be added on, then look to Councillor Somerville if you want this to be a separate motion or added to that motion.
I think it was covered in what you said, Mr. Mayor. As I've wrote everything down, and you did say what Councillor Drew is saying, and that it go back to staff, and that they look for legal advice from outside the office, and that would go back to the region.
Right, to the regional solicitors. So I just, the only thing I would say is timing on that. Staff would like to know realistically a timing if it coming up to the holiday break, whether it's 2 council terms or not. If February, is that sufficient enough time? Then we could get that, because we're not going to have anything from December. I don't know, I'm looking at timing from staff. Did you want to comment on the timing, just because I don't know what you have on the agenda planner and how in-depth this is, or if it can be done sooner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to council. Hearing the matter, I know that our agenda is quite full between now and the holiday break, and so most of this probably would be done in the new year. So you had mentioned the possibility of February, Mr. Mayor. That would be much preferred, and I think I heard you say just to come back to council with not so much as the completion of the review, but next steps and for council to consider should they want to proceed with the review.
Is timing okay with Councillor Drew then? Okay. All right, so questions on that, Councillor Kett?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to speak to a number of these issues. We can't just have a drop a bomb and let the newspapers go rampant without having any response to this. And I appreciate Mr. Danson's bringing the transparency. I appreciate his motive, but I mean, there's some things that could be explained very easily, so I think they should be. And I was like you, I don't have any copy of anything that was given of the FOI. I was notified that somebody wanted to do it, that's all.
Nor did I receive copy of the FOI, but I think, well, right now we have a delegation that is, if Mr. Danson does not want to answer questions unless you asked me about questions, and then I said I can answer the simple ones. A more wholesome one would need to be required. You want to hear Councillor Kett respond to the questions that you asked from him?
Mr. Kett wants to say something, that's fine.
Okay. It's Councillor Kett's prerogative. If he wants to, I'll we see it.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Mr. Danson's motives, and I realize that I'm a champion to transparency and accountability, and I believe the right avenue is to be open and upfront, and if it exposes me, then so be it. That's just what I believe in. So I'd like to ask Mr. Danson, are you in belief that this audit or disclosure to instill the confidence of our taxpayers, do you believe that that's what we need, to instill the confidence of our taxpayers with this audit?
Mr. Mayor, I said I would be quite happy to listen to what Mr. Kett has to say. I told you before, if you're not going to answer my questions, I don't see the point.
I will totally answer your questions.
For being here today, as I said right at the beginning, I'm a long-term resident, 20-some years now, and a taxpayer of Scugog Township. And what I think is there is some questionable issues here. I'm not alleging anything against Mr. Kett. What I'm saying is when I went through the Freedom of Information documentation, I saw a number of things that I know that when I was on council, we weren't allowed to do. We weren't allowed to claim for certain committees, we weren't allowed to claim from home to the office and that sort of thing. I asked in my presentation, if you didn't use the guidelines that we had, you put in new policy in March of 2017, what did you use in the hiatus to evaluate Mr. Kett's claims? It's a simple question. Now, is there anything? Well, there isn't anything. I mean, I don't expect you to answer it now because you just told me you can't answer those things.
Well, Mayor, the problem I have right now is that Mr. Danson feels free to come in here and drop all these things, but doesn't respect us enough to answer any of the questions, and says that I have the audacity to ask for compensation on a judicial review for my own personal use, and it was not for my personal use. Mr. Danson, I was cleared of any of the ridiculous comments made by the First Integrity Commissioner. I was totally exonerated. My lawyers say I'm totally exonerated, but still it comes out. And that's why I say that even though I was completely exonerated, I wanted to find out where the procedures went wrong. I didn't do it for my sake. I was the only one that was cleared in that document. I did it for other people's sake. And you say that I have the audacity to make things transparent. Well, that's just the way I am. It's up front. And when you comment about my expenses, I don't have a problem with telling anybody. Every single thing that I had, including the payments to KRCA, were approved by our CAO at the time and by our treasurer. I didn't just put in for a check. They're approved by both people. Okay, there was a double payment, and they came forward to me with the new rules, and thank goodness we have a new treasurer, and everything was straightened out. Okay, as far as charging for mileage to meetings, well, maybe Councillor Back is close to town. I charged it, and it was okayed by everybody. It's not, I didn't do anything that was fraudulent. It was brought to their attention. Very simple. Right? So, hopefully I'll answer that to you. Why I did it was because I had it all in my book, and I claimed it. Other people don't want to claim their expenses, don't. But it was approved, and everybody told me it was all right. So there wasn't just one person. There was a treasurer and a CAO at the time, or acting CAO. Okay? I believe that your bringing this forward has opened doors to new ways as well. I think that councillors should, if they have a mileage or an expense, put what it was there for. Okay? And I will give you some examples if you wish, because I'm sure that's what you were asking. But first of all, I want to understand if what your meaning is. Do you think we should have an audit for just me, or should it be for everybody? That's my question to you. Like, I think a normal person for transparency would say, let's audit everybody, because what's happening here is you're targeting me. Right? So, and I understand the thing about the harebrained scheme about police and everything like that, which I can talk to you later about. I've put the information together for all these things. I don't just come out with harebrained schemes. So if we're going to have an audit, there should be an audit for myself. There should be one for everybody on council. And it should include the regional pay and the regional expenses. And we all know that the regional councillor and the mayor make over $100,000, and that's more than the 5 councillors all put together, made in 2016. The other reason that my mileage is high is because we carpool. Okay? Councillor Guido and I carpooled to Windsor. We carpooled to Ottawa. Councillor Watton has gone with me as well. Counselor Somerville and Counselor Back at times. We carpool, because I'm the chauffeur. So my mileage is high because of that. Right? And those are high mileages when you go to Windsor and when you go to Ottawa. I believe there should be a public accounting for when I go to any of the conventions. Okay, so I'm going to give that to you right now, so that you can feel that you're getting your. All right, so I went to Ogra last year, right, to meet with Enbridge to get natural gas onto the island. I've been lobbying them for 5 years. Finally, it's starting to come out to fruition, and it's going to happen. Okay. In fact, I have to bring that up in council later on, that we needed a letter of support for the grant. Okay, so that's something that happens at these. We don't just go there to party. We go there to have. I'm not sure how the old council did it, but we actually go there for business. Did you know that I went to Bowling Green University to speak with Dr. Robert Michael McKay regarding the blue algae and its impacts on a community? This is over a 1,500-kilometer drive, okay, 12 hours. I didn't charge for mileage, hotel, meals, or anything. Just a couple of weeks ago, I drove to Green Hill Produce, which is one of the largest greenhouse operations with 86 acres of greenhouse. Just under 4 million square feet. Okay, it's second only to Nature Fresh Farms that has 225 acres of greenhouse, 10 million square feet. I went down there. I didn't charge for mileage, meals, or anything. So if you're asking if my mileage is beneficial and are they getting their return for investment, we've got fiber optic internet on the island. We're going to have natural gas within the year and a half. So that's a fairly good return on investment as far as I go. Okay? I would say phony baloney Integrity Commission reports for $30,000 aren't a good value for their money. Okay?
Okay, Councillor Kidd, I really want to...
No, I'm sorry, Mayor. I mean, you know what he's dropped on me, so I'd like to answer these questions.
Do you have, I also gave him a time limit too, so I want to know if you're coming to the end of what you're saying.
I'm answering his questions. So, okay. Legal fees, I addressed that for you. Mileage, hopefully you can understand where I'm going with the mileage. I was not told that I couldn't charge to come to the town here. And if you say that the distance from the town to KRCA is 50, and you realize that it's almost 20 to my house, you'll understand that there was no fraud. It was the exact mileage. It's just, it shouldn't have been claimed. So, I mean, I made a mistake, and I apologize for it, and it's paid back. So
let me just respond to that particular thing, since you've raised it, Mr. Kett. You claimed 156 kilometers most of the time, not all of the time. But
I believe it was 152.
Yeah, it was 152, 156, 154. But most of the time it was 156.
It would depend on where I left from.
Just let me finish. So from this building, I think I just established, although the mayor didn't respond to it, it's 96 kilometers return, right?
Like I say,
well,
if you would have asked me that before, I could have looked it up.
Google Maps says it's 96 return. Okay. When you come from your home on the island to this building, what you've charged, and I said it again in here, you charged basically 24 kilometers every time you did that. So by simple math, add 24 to 96, and you get 120. You claimed 156.
I don't have a room here. I'd have to go home again. Would that be 48?
Mr. Kett, when you were going to Kawartha, I'm not sure what time the meetings were, but I'm assuming that you went, just like you said, from your home to Kawartha. And that's why I said I don't know what their reimbursement policy is. I said it this afternoon. You may not have heard me, but I said it. I don't know what it is, so I'm not going to say it's wrong or it's right. What I asked the mayor was, how do you account for the 60-kilometer difference, which works out at 50-some cents a kilometer at about $30 each time you went to KRCA. As an auditor, Mr. Kett, I spend a long time doing audits. That would be the question I would ask. So, okay, so Google says it's 96. Mr. Kett claims 156. Like, what's the difference? Now you've told me, well, I came from home. So you still have 30 kilometers difference, which is $15. So that's the question that needs to be answered.
That's very good. That's very good. That's a good question. And again,
it's not very good. It's just simple math. And if you multiply it by the number of meetings, then that's probably, say, 20 meetings. That's $300. To me, when I add all these things up, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. It's not just like $1,189.
but you and I, anyways, I'll cut this short, but you and I are disagreeing on the fact that I was leaving from here, because I'm saying that I was leaving from my house, so I'm adding that on. Well,
that's
I
fine.
made a mistake, okay, and it was last year. I made a mistake, it's been paid back, or last spring, sorry. Okay, any of the ones that were I didn't object to this, because there was some situations where there was no meeting, there was no board meeting.
I'm just
it's
written in the stuff
I understand.
was given. It's not me that's saying it.
I understand, but it's you that's saying it.
Well, I'm just saying what was
It's
in
you
it.
that's saying it
Decorum,
to everybody.
This is not a back and forth. This is Councillor Kett. If you've got one or two more, then we're done with this. We move on, because we already have a motion on the floor that is going to be looking into this further, so giving you the opportunity to respond to the questions that were put out there, and so choose wisely.
That's fine. I mean, I would support any motion that was made, that if there was going to be an audit to all councillors.
Okay, so I have, Mr. Clerk, can you just read back what's been captured there? Councillor Somerville, this is your motion that was friendly amended. If you could just acknowledge whether you accept that, or if it's captured it?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and like the Mayor said, this is what I captured for your approval, Councillor Somerville. That the delegation went Howard Danson regarding council expense accounts be received, and that staff get advice from the region legal and township auditors on how to move forward with regard to Councillor Kett's expense claims, and to report back by February 2018.
Councillor Back?
Thank you. Through the mayor, can I make a friendly amendment?
You put forward what your amendment's going to be, and then Councillor Somerville can tell you whether she accepts it.
If you want it or not, okay. It would be good to actually see an independent review, or to staff to look into the possibility of an independent review for all taxpayers' expenditures, as well as expenditure procedures. So this would include council expenses, expenses of staff, committee and board expenses, credit card expenses, as well as the approval procedure. The reason I'm asking this is I was expensed over $1,000 on my expense for conferences, to a conference I didn't attend, and to a dinner that I did not eat. So I think a more wholesome, I think it's a good idea, and a wholesome idea on the entire expense process for the township. And I'm saying that in order for transparency.
I don't know if it wasn't captured completely, because Councillor Somerville, did you, first of all, you heard what Councillor Back had asked there, if that's your intent to accept the friendly amendment for your motion, or to deal with that separately?
I think I will accept that one, because I think that we do need to open it up and be more transparent, so I will accept that as a friendly amendment.
Okay, so I don't think it's been captured fully on this one here, so I would just want to,
Just scribbling.
just the motion part of it, not like, be concise.
Be succinct. For an independent review of all of the expenditures with regards to the entire council expenses, expenses of staff, expenses of committee and board, plural, credit card expenses, as well as the approval of procedures for paying such expenses.
Well, that's what I'm just, the reason why I'm just, maybe, exhausted a bit is because of the scope of that is a large undertaking that we're not, we recall we are coming up to, a period of time where we have a shortened council term next year because of the election, so there's a lot of things that we're trying to get done. I don't want to minimize the importance of the transparency, absolutely not, but I want to make sure that what's being undertaken here is able to be done and performed in time. So I don't know if this can be paired off into two steps or not. So.
Through the mayor, so my understanding was that the first part of the motion was for staff to consider and speak to legal and how to proceed, so I would ask that this is included in that. It's very, to me, it's very simple. They're basically the same things with regards to staff expenses, how they're paid out, council expenses, how they're paid out, boards, they all have a budget, and so I don't think it's that large of a scope. I think, and going forth into a new term of council, I think it's actually a good idea, and it will be ready in terms for the next term.
So, Councillor Brack, am I clear in hearing that you're saying that this motion, when it starts off, it says that staff seek advice from regional legal and township auditors on how to move forward with regard to the Councillor Kett's expense claims and to report back by February 18, 2018, and staff request an independent review of this, or is it to get advice on how to move forward with it, because we don't know the scope of this, and there was a report, the bylaw that was just done for amending the claims procedure. There was a report, staff had already done a significant undertaking with this, so not sure if your amendment to Councillor Somerville's motion was to add that to seeking the advice from the external auditors and legal.
I would think at the same time, when you're asking about the one councillor's expenses, to just ask of the entire council expenses, because there's some anomalies here that, you know, I can even question. I didn't spend $1,000 at a council conference that I wasn't even at. How did that get expensed?
But that was your intent, though, was to not the full direction that to be undertaken, is to come back with the scope and the size and what's the best method moving forward, and then we have the opportunity to say whether that scope would include staff or would just include council once we know the magnitude of what time is required for that.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Councillor Somerville?
Yes,
okay.
I will go with that.
So council, but the larger scope of it would come back with the recommendations and including time and maybe a cost estimate on that, because here we are talking about transparency, but there's also a responsibility to make sure that we're aware of what costs that we're committing the township under going forward. So, Councillor Watton?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to be clear, we're just going to seek advice from legal on both matters. Is that where we are with this motion, Councillor Somerville?
Legal and financial. That it said the auditor and legal. Yeah. And then it's going to come back to us with a report.
Okay, because that's fine. Thanks.
Any other questions from council? Councillor Kett?
So I'd like another friendly amendment to that to actually have an audit made on the aforementioned going back to 2010.
not, this Councillor Somerville said no, she doesn't accept it as a friendly amendment, so. Any other questions on the motion that's on the floor? All right, seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. So that is now, as you understand, the process will unfold, and you'll be able to see that when this report is coming back, and we'll see the next steps that are undertaken. If there's anything that you'd like to provide me, or any questions that you didn't get answered from me, I'd be happy to answer them all. I'm not trying to skirt answering them. I just want to make sure that I have the same luxury of having the details in front of me. So appreciate your time, and thank you very much for coming forward. Next item up for agenda is conduct. Next up is Code of Conduct update. Mr. Newman, Director of Corporate Service Clerk, is going to present. Yes?
I'm just wondering, even before we start the code of conduct, I actually requested that the Integrity Commissioner be informed of all these changes, and there's been no documentation to that effect attached to the agenda.
Well, I think that we'll allow Mr. Newman to do his presentation, and he'll be able to answer that because he was heading up this process. So.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Council. The Integrity Commissioner, as stated within my report, was the draft Code of Conduct and has provided comments, and his comments are listed in my report, so you can see them all there. And I'll touch on some of them during my presentation as well. So just starting with the background, so on September 11th, 2017 GPNA meeting, staff directed myself to undertake a review and update of our Council Code of Conduct, and to report back by December 4th, 2017, just so happens to be today. So the process in which I undertook in updating the Code of Conduct was to, basically I used the Durham Region Code of Conduct as a base for our Code of Conduct. There's a couple of reasons for that. The main reason there is being consistent. So we have two members of our Scugog Council who sit on a regional council, so provide some consistency certainly for our regional councillor and the mayor who sits on Durham Region Council. And it also provides consistency for our Integrity Commissioner as well. So as everybody knows, the Integrity Commissioner for Scugog is also the Integrity Commissioner for Durham Region. So upon using the Durham Region Code as a base, I obviously made changes as required and appropriate, and I'll go through some of those changes. Provided a draft copy of the code for review and comment to the senior management team, the Township's legal solicitor, Loopster Nixon, also the Township's Integrity Commissioner, who all provided advice and has all been incorporated into the final product that you see here today for your approval. Draft was presented to Council, with the agenda process on November 29th, and then obviously again presentation to Council today, December 4th. So the timing for inquiries and reports. So this section was added to our Council Code of Conduct. This is not a section you'll find in the Durham Region Code of Conduct at this time. This section is actually a requirement under Bill 68, but not until March 1, 2019. However, and just on that, it's in relation to a regular election. So when a Code of Conduct complaint can be received and when it can be reported on by the Integrity Commissioner in relation to a regular election. So essentially that section of Bill 68 which will amend the Municipal Act, says that the completion of an investigation has to be done by nomination day, or it shall be terminated. However, there is a recommencement of that complaint possible if the member of council is still a member of council after the election, and if the complainant decides to continue on with that complaint. So there is that. So that's the termination period. And between nomination day and voting day, which for the 2018 election is between July 27th and October 22nd, there'll be no reports by the Integrity Commissioner, no complaints received during that period of time, and no decision of council, re any penalty. So it just puts a hiatus on code of conduct complaints during that election period. So like I said, that's something that I added. I think that's important. I think that's a really good change that is proposed by Bill 68. Essentially, the province decided that changes such as this, they weren't going to enforce until the new term of council. And they took that position with a lot of other changes as well that are March 1. So essentially allowing this council to, this term of council for all terms of council to continue on as they have been so far the past 3 years. However, I think it's a very important change that I think should be implemented now. Council certainly have that opportunity to implement that now because you passed your own code of conduct. So I am recommending that it be passed now so we don't have to go through those code of conduct complaints during the election period. The clerk will be busy enough. Moving on from that section, so just going to clarify, I've outlined some of the items that have changed. I haven't outlined every single section of the Code of Conduct during this presentation. You'll see that within my report and within the code itself. So these are just some of the changes and maybe the highlights. So in terms of conduct, at meetings, respecting staff and others, essentially it just says treat everybody with respect, don't harass, discriminate, bully, etc. Don't use inappropriate language. Understand that staff operate under the direction of senior management team and in accordance with council directions. To not injure the professional or ethical reputation of staff or improperly influence any staff member. So pretty standard language in there, not too much change in those sections with regards to the Regent's Code of Conduct. So very, very standard language there. Gifts and/or benefits. Okay, this is a very interesting one. So the clerk, myself, was invited to by Durham Region, and all the lower tier municipal clerks got together to discuss gifts and benefits. This was several months ago. It was something that the Durham Region was going to head up. It kind of was just that one meeting, and then no follow-up meetings after that. But basically, the discussion there was around gifts and of benefits. So what I've gone with here is a bit of a hybrid of the Pickering, the way they deal with gifts and benefits, and St. Catherine's also do it this way. Basically, the discussion around the table during the Durham Region meeting was anywhere from $0, there shall be no gifts or benefits, council should not receive anything, to, well, it doesn't matter what it costs as long as it's for, say, a charitable purpose. So there was a wide range, and even in this room, even when I brought this up with senior management team, very difficult to decide on exactly what the number is for a gift or benefit that's going to affect a person's decision making. So it's very difficult to determine. So what I have suggested, and like I said, it's something that similar to City of Pickering, City of St. Catherine's, is just simply to be open and transparent and disclose any gifts and benefits. So that's where I was where I landed on. So for any single gift or and/or benefit of $50 or more, the value of $50 or more, you would simply disclose that, and then we would just, I'd create a disclosure statement. You'd simply write it on a disclosure statement, and we would just make it public. And any combination of gifts and/or benefits from the same source in a calendar year of $100 or more. So that, just putting that cap on, okay, we don't want someone giving you $20 1,000 times during the calendar year. So there just had to be that cap on there as well. So that's what that's my proposal today in terms of gifts and benefits, is simply disclose. Nowhere in there does it say you cannot accept a gift or benefit. It simply says that if you receive a gift or benefit and it meets one of these amounts, simply disclose it. So that's, I think, what I consider is the fairest option. There are going to be times when councillors get gifts and/or benefits. We're not saying that's wrong. We're just simply saying disclose it. And the hope there is that if a councillor receives a gift and a benefit and their gut says, oh wait, that might not be seen right because I've disclosed this, that's the reaction that we would like to see, in that maybe you don't accept that one now. So it's discouraged in principle, but understanding that there are those charitable things that councils get requested to go to, and someone else may pick up the tab. Simply disclosure is what I feel is the most fair option. Okay, so this is getting into the Integrity Commissioner comments now. So the Integrity Commissioner, like I said, was provided a draft copy of the Code of Conduct, and this is obviously a very brief version of what he provided, but he provided some very good comments I was very happy to incorporate into the Code of Conduct, which is what you see today. So essentially made it a contravention to breach your declaration of office. Wasn't clearly stated in the Regents Code that was the base, so just simply added wording that's contravention. Took away essentially the Integrity Commissioner's powers when we're in a meeting, and left that power with the chair, or the presiding officer is what it's called in its Code of Conduct. So the conduct at meetings shall be dealt with by the chair. There is an exception. If the chair doesn't deal with that matter during the meeting, then there is the possibility for a Code of Conduct complaint to be handled by the Integrity Commissioner. Or if the matter is so serious, it requires an extra attention or extra look by the Integrity Commissioner, then there's that opportunity as well. But essentially is leaving meetings alone in the sense that it's up to the presiding officer to deal with any issues with the procedure bylaw, for instance, at a meeting, which I thought was a very good change. It is a change that I did attend a Bill 68 training session a couple months ago, and it is something that I did hear from the presenter at that time as well, is we should leave meetings to the presiding officer, and this is exactly what he had suggested, so I've incorporated that. Made it a contravention for a member to make an unfounded Code of Conduct complaint against another member. So if a councillor complains against another councillor and is found to be unfounded, then that is a contravention of the Code of Conduct. So again, another item that the Integrity Commissioner suggested that I add, which I have. Was very strongly opinionated on that not being required to be an affidavit to submit a complaint. So I removed the requirement for an affidavit. That was one of the longer pieces of commentary that he gave was on the affidavit piece, and I'd be happy to share that, but he was very much against affidavits being required to submit a complaint. So it would just be a simple form in this case. Made an option for the complaints to be sent directly to the Integrity Commissioners, because as it's written right now, it's forwarded through the clerk. However, the clerk has no issue with it being forwarded directly to the Integrity Commissioner, so that's been included as well. In that situation, though, we have requested that the Integrity Commissioner do notify the township, notify the clerk that a complaint's been received. Not necessarily the details of the complaint, just that one has been received, just so that we know it's coming eventually. And then there's also an option for the Integrity Commissioner to report on cost if the cost is going to be disproportionate to an importance in case of a complaint from a member against another member. So essentially, if a member complains against another member, the Integrity Commissioner starts doing his investigation and finds that the costs are just going to be simply too high for the importance of the matter. He'll report to council and say, do you want me to continue with this complaint or not, because the costs are just not worth what the matter is about. So again, I think that was a good thing. I mean, that's essentially, if Hughes is going to limit his bill, which I think is a good thing in the end. And he also made it so that the complainant name would be released, subject to certain conditions. So if it's a complaint specific about harassment or discrimination, if it's personal, is the way he put it, personal privacy about the complainant, he wouldn't release that person's name. But if it's just a general complaint, not specific to the personal privacy or something, he suggested that the complainant's name be released throughout the report process. So that's been included as well. So that was the Integrity Commissioner comments. So moving on, I was asked about criminal activity and what sort of role the Code of Conduct plays in criminal activity. And essentially, Section 223.8 of the Municipal Act prevents the Integrity Commissioner from investigating a crime. So if he does happen to get a Code of Conduct complaint, does find some criminal aspect to it or possible alleged criminal activity, he's required to immediately turn the matter over to the police if he suspects that. So there's no ability for the Integrity Commissioner to investigate any sort of criminal activity, and that's spelled out in the Municipal Act. The other piece of our current Code of Conduct is about an investigation by council. So that section specifically in our current code of law says that if the integrity commissioner is not appointed, council can do an investigation. Well, we have an appointed integrity commissioner now, so that section would never be used anyway, even if we were operated under the same code of conduct. On top of that, doing an investigation by council is not contemplated in the Municipal Act whatsoever. The Municipal Act talks about inquiry by an integrity commissioner, not council. There's nowhere within there that suggests that council would do an investigation. Council also cannot impose a penalty, any penalty, on a member for breach of code of conduct unless the integrity commissioner finds a breach of the code of conduct. So if there's even if he doesn't find a breach and he brings a report to council, council cannot then impose a penalty because you can only impose a penalty if the integrity commissioner finds a breach of the code of conduct. The other, just some comments on there as well about investigation by council. I mean, really, council shouldn't be investigating themselves. The point is to have, the purpose of an IC is to have that independent third party do that investigation. And I mean, on top of that, it'd be very difficult for a council as a group to conduct an investigation. I mean, how are you going to review submissions, conduct interviews, write reports, all things that the integrity commissioner does? It'd just be very difficult in this setting, so that's why you have that third party role. And council's role in the code of conduct process is simply to decide the penalty if a contravention is found. So again, there has to be first that finding of a contravention by the integrity commissioner before council can even think about issuing a penalty to a member. And that brings me to the conclusion of my presentation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. So we'll just deal with questions of the report. We do have the items coming forward as part of the consent agenda, so if you have specific items with that report, we can bring that report forward. So right now, is there questions just on the presentation from Mr. Newman? Councillor Somerville?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a good report, thanks. And I can't remember, my memory goes back that far, but when I started council, it's just what you're going to do at the beginning of next council is review the code of conduct.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the council. Yes, actually, the procedure bylaw, which is also on this agenda, states that the code of conduct and the procedure bylaw shall be reviewed within the first 6 months of each council term. So yes. Because
I can't remember this going through this. I probably did, but I had so many things going through my head at that time. Because I think this is good for especially new council members. The old ones, they can remember all this stuff, but it's good. I had a question too. Because the big buzzword right now in the news is sexual intimidation, you never mention that in anything in the code of conduct, like flashing pictures and body language, and I don't know whether we'd ever have anything like that here. But as we know, it's in the news. Do you think that would be an idea to put that in the code of conduct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. No, simply because I would consider that more of criminal activity, and even if it was in the code of conduct, the integrity commissioner would have to hand that over to the police. So I would consider that more of a criminal matter that would be dealt with by the police. Okay,
I wondered about that one.
As much as it shouldn't happen.
Well, people. And my other question is, if the integrity commissioner decides not to do an investigation, and he finds insufficient grounds for an investigation, and that's on page 931, does he get paid for his time?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, just recalling the contract, and I'd covered by the $900 retainer that the region actually pays. We don't even pay that. I believe the contract is worded such that everything up until the investigation is conducted is covered by the retainer. I believe that's the wording in the contract. So no, I believe that's the case.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Any other questions, Councillor Watton?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just respecting that if this is approved, it comes into effect today or tomorrow. At the council meeting. Sorry, of course. Are there any differences that in the promises contained in the declaration of office, are there any differences between what this council has promised and what a new council would promise?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the councillor, no, the declaration will remain the same.
Councillor Barron?
Thank you. Through the mayor, I have a few questions. With regards to the gifts and benefits, I really don't see any reason why a council member should receive any gifts. I don't, maybe it's just me, but I just don't think that there's a need for it, and really, any gift, to me, comes with something, and I don't like that. I would prefer, I don't know what the rest of council thinks on that matter, but I really don't think it's appropriate for any council member or staff member to receive gifts from the public, because even if it's innocent and someone's just bringing, something in, but usually there's always something attached to it. And I think it's better if you just err on the side of caution and say, no gifts, thank you, but no, we're not allowed. I'll throw that out to everybody else on their thoughts of that.
Do you want to just clarify something on that? Because this actually was a conversation with other mayors and regional councillors in the one of the meetings, I think last year, discussing about what exactly that. Why would you ever accept anything? It's because some cultures, it's insulting if you don't take a ceremonial gift from them, etc. So you wouldn't want to not accept something when you're a guest in their. It's a token gift, a token gesture. So to be non-insulting to that, then you would accept it. But you can always go and relinquish that gift to the township, and that's why that's written in there. You can relinquish it if you don't want to be seen as accepting something. But I agree with you that you don't want to accept anything and then have an obligation down the road. But that's what that conversation came up with. That scenario actually happened, but where they accepted that. So I don't know if Mr. Clerk had anything to add on to that, because you guys had wholesome discussions on.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to council. I mean, certainly that's the highest standard, but in reviewing this, I wasn't sure if that was, I don't want to say reasonable, but I think it's just become a part of council members that, just giving an example, golf tournaments. There are occasions where, a council member's golf, the tournament might be paid for by a developer or something of that description. But because it's a charitable event, some people say that's okay, and some people say it's not okay. And that's where I was trying to say that depends who you talk to. It was everything from $0 to it's fine as long as it's for a charitable purpose. So there was that wide range of trying to figure out what it was. So what I came to was disclose. And if you're not comfortable with accepting it, that probably tells you something. And the other piece too is it depends on the individual member as well. Let's say, if you're a millionaire, $50 might not sway your decision. But if you have $0 in the bank, maybe $50 does sway your decision. So again, it's one of those things that you can't nail it down to one specific, this number, anything over is going to be the right number. It was just, okay, disclose, and hopefully that solves the issue. But yeah, it's a tricky one, that's for sure, I agree.
So may I ask then, and especially in that example of a developer paying for a golf tournament, which could be in the several hundreds of dollars, and you disclose that, what happens then if there's an Integrity Commission complaint against the counselor for disclosing that? Because to me, I don't think you should be taking any, not even a stick of gum from a developer, because you're making a decision which would be in the interest of the developer making money. Does that open by accepting and disclosing and following the rules? Does that open up that counselor then to?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the councillor. There is a procedure within the Code of Conduct about gifts and benefits. So essentially, you receive a gift or benefit, you disclose it like you should. Basically, there is that option for anybody to go to the Integrity Commission and say that gift or benefit is not appropriate. And the Integrity Commissioner can have a look on the face of it and say yes or no. And then if he thinks, yeah, there could be some questions there, he will then ask the council to explain, the purpose of that gift and or benefit, and give them that opportunity. Upon that explanation, he'll then decide whether it's appropriate or not. And then essentially not the penalty, but the result of that would be, if he finds it's inappropriate, you have to give it back or to give the value back. Or if it's already being consumed, for instance, is to pay the value to the township. So there is a process within that code of conduct about if the Integrity Commissioner finds that it is an inappropriate gift and or benefit.
Okay, I have a few more. Is there anything in here that states the possibility of mediation with regards to a complaint prior to it going into a full-blown Integrity Commission report? Because sometimes, and we did receive communications from Mr. Corrigan, where sometimes there could just be a misunderstanding, and if mediation is brought forth, and it could even be from the Integrity Commissioner meeting with the two parties or with the clerk to just explain each other's side, that could indeed rectify the situation and not have the township on the hook for a $30,000 report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to council. There is wording in there, and I was just while you were speaking, just trying to find it. I didn't find the exact section, but there is. It's not, mediation is not the word that was used within the code of conduct, but there is that option if the Integrity Commissioner sees fit to bring the parties together and do it informally that way. He can. There is that option in there. Just couldn't find it for you this very second, but I do recall that being in there.
Yes, I do have more, thank you. With regards to, on page 16, section 2.2.4, reprisal or obstruction in the application and enforcement of this code. I understand yourself and the Integrity Commissioner are against having sworn affidavits, but other municipalities have on the standard form that people fill out at the bottom that it's an offense to make a false claim. I think that would perhaps be a best practice I can capture those from other code of conduct forms to provide you. I have it written somewhere, but just looking for it right now. I just think that could be a best practice as well with regards to people filling out forms. But also then in regards to...
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through to council. I understand where you're going with that, but the Integrity Commissioner does have the option to determine whether the complaint is vexatious or frivolous, and then obviously dismiss the complaint. However, he can't impose any penalties on the complainant. He can only impose the penalties under the Municipal Act. So there'd be no penalty for someone doing that that he could or this council could impose. All he can do is determine that it's vexatious, frivolous and vexatious, and then not investigate.
Okay, because there are other municipalities that on that form actually say it's a criminal offense to falsely make a false accusation or defamation.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to council. Yes, and that was something that the Integrity Commissioner vehemently was against. Okay. He said, do not suggest any type of criminal activity on an affidavit form. It's a hypothetical that the township should not be making comment on. So that actually, I do understand now what you're referencing. That was a part of our affidavit form, but on the basis of the Integrity Commissioner, who you know is also a lawyer, solicitor, suggested that under no circumstances should we be suggesting that. So on his advice, I actually removed that suggestion that it's a criminal offense and talked about defamation and things like that, of that nature.
Okay, and bear with me, I just have a couple more. On page 31 of the actual your actual code of conduct document. Section 9, investigation.
There's only 18 pages.
Oh, pardon me, 31 at the top, 13 at the bottom. With regards to 10 business days, I would suggest that that's actually increased. Having been put through this process, 10 business days really is not a long time to gather your stuff together, so to speak, you know, to read a complaint, to understand where it's coming from. It'll be good that in most instances the person will be identified, but when you don't even know who the person is that's putting a complaint about, it's hard to actually format what the actual occurrences were. But also, depending on the severity, it's hard to get appointments with lawyers as well, to have legal advice, and so 10 business days really is not a lot of time to have a proper defense, so to speak. And as you saw, where we had the first process, things not being done correctly and whatnot, and people's reputations put through the mud, it would have been nicer to have longer than, and that was actually just 10 days. So I appreciate 10 business days, but it's still not, I don't think, enough to wholesomely put a proper defense. And as I said, it seems like now you really do need to include a lawyer, because you saw what happened, and you can't just get lawyers at the drop of a dime. So if I would respectfully ask if you consider to increase that time frame.
Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to Council. I have no objection to that. At the time of the report, I would suggest that the Council just add to the motion that change be made, and Council can decide what's appropriate in that case, but I don't have any objection to that being increased.
Thank you. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments on the presentation? Councillor Kett?
Thank you. On page 42, it says mandatory appointment of Integrity Commissioner to investigate reported breaches of codes of conduct and Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Has our Integrity Commissioner read over this part of it as well?
Go ahead.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Council, that's within the procedure bylaw, not the code of conduct. So you've gone on to the next, my next report. Just page 42 is the procedure bylaw, not the code of conduct.
All right.
Okay, save your question.
That's
Any
fine.
others? Okay, actually, I had made the motion to receive the report, and I can't do that now, so do I have a mover to receive the report? Councillor Somerville. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Back?
Thank you. Through the chair, so would we be, when would we actually make a change to the 10 business days? I really don't think it's enough time.
You can make an amendment to the motion when the motion comes forward for acceptance of the report.
Later on in the...
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Councillor Somerville?
Thank you. I just want to ask a question about that, because on page 31, the question that responds to Councillor Back, it says, or such other amount of time that the Integrity Commissioner deems reasonable. Does that not cover that?
Clerk?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to Council. That certainly gives the Integrity Commission discretion to extend the time if needed, absolutely. So, yes, if the subject of the complaint says I need more time, I'm sure that the Integrity Commissioner will take that into account. You know, I suggest he would probably ask for what reason, provided that he receives a reasonable reason. I'm sure that he would be respectful of a member's time and extend it as needed.
So do we actually need to have a change of a motion here? And it goes over to the next page even, at the B, and it says, provide a copy of the response provide a copy of the response provided by the member to a complainant with a request for a written reply within 10 business days or such other amount of time that the Integrity Commissioner sees reasonable. So, I mean, it does cover it again, So I'm questioning why we need to go into that one.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the council, that's a decision of council. I don't have any objection to it being 10 business days or some greater time frame, but certainly you are 100% correct. It gives the discretion to the Integrity Commissioner to, if 10 business days doesn't work, then it'll be some other time at his discretion. So it certainly could work that way if left as is. And like Councillor Back already noted, it originally in the current Code of Conduct it's 10 days, so did increase it to 10 business days. Just another thing to take into account is that the Integrity Commissioner is on a timeline as well. So he has 90 days in which to submit a report. So an increase, 10 business days, or to 20 business days, technically the month. So then you've taken off a month of his time. Now he's got 2 months left. Don't get me wrong, that should be plenty of time. But I'm just suggesting I don't have an objection to it. But you are right that it does give the Integrity Commission discretion to allow more time if needed.
If it's to this, maybe you could, when you make your amendment, you could give your reasons then. Would that be okay?
Yep.
Okay. So, on the motion to receive, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We're now at the consent agenda, and we have the Code of Conduct, 10.2.1. I pulled that. 10.2.2, the Procedure Bylaw, 10.2.3, 2.4, and 3.1 have all been pulled. So there is 10.1.1, the minutes, and 10.2.5, the Emergency Management Program. Do I have a motion on to receive them or approve them? What is it? Okay. That the items listed under Section 10 Consent Agenda be approved, save and accept the items that I mentioned. So I have a mover, please? No? I have a mover to accept the remaining? Did you have some more you wanted pulled?
Yes, please.
Okay, which one?
10.2.5, please.
Okay. Okay, so, can I have a motion to approve 10.1.1? Councillor Watton? Thank you. Okay, 10.2.1, are there any other speakers to the Code of Conduct? Or is there someone that wishes to make a motion? Oh. Yeah. We did, didn't we pass that one? We did. There was only the one.
Yep. So that one's being approved, the rest
Yeah.
are being pulled.
Yes, they're pulled, yeah. So 10.2.1 is the first one pulled.
No, 10.1. Yes, 10.2.
10.2.1 is the first one being pulled, the Code of Conduct. Have a motion to put it on the floor, please. Oh, that was me, so I can't, Councillor Watton, thank you. Questions or comments? Councillor Back.
Thank you, through the chair. I would like to add recommendation number 3 that and I can't even find where it is, that the time frame be extended to 15 business days. My reasoning being it's having been through this process, it is not enough time to do a wholesome defense, to get your ideas together and to write a proper defense. And then I said, especially if you don't even know who the person is that's complaining about you. So I really do think that that should be. The first Integrity Commissioner even made comments on that to myself, stating that it was our Code of Conduct and he had not seen before where they were 10 days and not 10 business days. Question to the clerk, is there any way that the 90-day start to finish process could be extended to reflect this?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through to Council. Again, this is Council's Code of Conduct, so yes, you can change it, you can extend it if you like. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, only because it just drags the whole process on longer, and I do believe that the longer the process goes, well, I think the bill might get a little bit higher as well if the process goes longer. So, yes, you can change it. It's up to council.
So the question being that a council member gets informed that they have an Integrity Commission complaint against them, then there's right now, or we're going to propose change to 10 business days, and I'm requesting it to be 15 business days. The Integrity Commissioner at this point is really sort of not on the time clock because there's that lull. They're not even right now being charged for the 10 days when there's no response. And then to extend 90 days from receipt of the member's defense, there should be no change in price because that's when the Integrity Commissioner does his report or her report when they're in receipt of, and they have 90 days. So that's why I'm respectfully asking that, because if any of you ever have the unfortunate circumstance to have to get the shock of having an Integrity Commission complaint against yourself, try to figure out who it is, what the situation was, and then gather all sorts of evidence over a course of months or years. You would appreciate that 10 business days is not a lot of time, and when it's your reputation on the line, you need to have a proper amount of time to do this, and I don't think 5 business days is really asking for a lot, but if you're in that situation, I think you would appreciate it.
Any comment, Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through the council. I don't have any objection to the 90 days being increased. Again, that's a decision of council. If you'd like it to be more, like council would like it to be more time, then I don't have any strict objection to that. Thank you.
Just on that point, Mr. Clerk, we're looking for consistency throughout the region. Any comment on that? It's not lighting up, so it doesn't light up. Okay. I just wanted to ask the clerk with consistency with the rest of the region.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to council. That is correct. I mean, that's what it is within the Durham Region Code is 90 days. So, yes, if we change it to something different, that will make it inconsistent with the current Region's Code. That's not to say that they couldn't change theirs either, but yes, it would be consistent if it was 90 days right now.
Okay, thank you. Just for your awareness. And Councillor Batt, can you give us a specific referral, the page number and the section number that you want amended?
Thank you. Through the chair, it would be section 9 under investigations, section A.
Section 9A.
As well as section B.
Okay. So section 9A you're suggesting is 15 business days?
Yes.
And section B, be what?
15 business days as well. And I have no idea in here where the 90-day wholesome start to finish is. I'll leave that to our editor or our author.
The clerk can find it, I'm sure. Okay. Councillor Watton.
Thank you. I just have a question on page 15 of 18. Under the report to recommendations, it references 60 days, number 16. And I'm wondering if that 60 days is supposed to be the 90 days that we now want to change to longer.
Mr. Clerk?
33 or 50.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to the council. Just looking at that section now, and I believe actually it must have been, it was changed to 60, my apologies, so I was still referring to the old 90-day rule, which is within our current code. Yeah, so my apologies. It appears that the Regions Code was 60, and I did change it to 60 to be consistent there. So my apologies, Councillor Back. I misspoke when I said 90 previously.
And you are suggesting, Councillor Back, that it be,
I would just extend it by 5 business days, which would be 7, technically, a week.
5 business days from the,
Well, 5 business days, but when you're adding up days, it's a week.
From the 90?
Depends on...
no, I'm talking about the 60 days and the 90
Correct,
days.
so the 60 should be changed.
To 65?
Yes.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Watton?
So we're not worried about the 90 days? I'm confused. I thought we wanted to extend the 90 days longer, given that we've added 5 days to the original, of getting your information together, and now we've gone back to 65?
To respond, thank you through the chair, to respond to that, if the clerk is changing 90 days to 60 days for the integrity commissioner to do his or her job, then and if they're able to do that within the region, then just extending the 5 days, business days, for a member to get their information in order is sort of out of respect to the integrity commissioner to add 5 days and not really take away 5 days from that investigation that they need for 60 days. It doesn't matter to me how long it takes the integrity commissioner to do their job. My concern is the member having to get their information and defense in a line. And if we take 5 extra days, I think it's a respectful nod to the integrity commissioner to give them 5 extra days to complete.
Are you making that 2 separate amendments, Councillor Back?
Through the chair, it doesn't really matter to me. It's one or the other. I mean, if council chooses to extend to 15 business days for a member, but not 5 extra days for integrity commissioner, that doesn't affect me. So whatever the chair deems appropriate.
Perhaps we should deal with them separately. Okay, so we've got that amendment on the floor. Amendment A is changing the 10 business days to 15 business days. Amendment made by Councillor Back. Questions or comments on that? All those, Councillor Kett?
Thank you. I don't disagree with the 15 days, but I don't agree with extending the 60. So, I mean, I'll just put it at that.
That's why I suggest we do it separately.
Exactly. Thank you.
Councillor Somerville, did you have a...
Yeah, I have to agree with that too, thank you, Madam Chair. Because once you start going into this, you start seeing all sorts of dates that are going to need to be changed, if you're going to rise to another 5 more days. So I think just leave it at the 1, and don't go into the other 65 days. I think by then they've got 60 days should be adequate. That's 3 months. You're going over.
And your comment earlier was that it can be extended by the Integrity Commissioner.
Exactly.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, to the motion. All those in favor? To the 15 days.
Right.
Carried. Thank you. The second amendment was to change it to 65 days for the Integrity Commissioner to come back with his or her report, which is on page 33 of the agenda, number 16. Motion to extend, amendment to extend that to 65 days. All those in favor? Or any questions or comments on that? All those in favor? That's lost. Thank you very much. Any other amendments or questions or comments to the report? I had 2, and I would ask that somebody make these amendments if somebody agrees. On page 27 of the agenda, I would suggest item number 38. I would suggest that it read official information related to decisions and resolutions of council its boards or committees shall be communicated to the public and the media and so on. And, yes, that's the first one. I just believe that it's a little clearer. I did speak to the clerk today who agreed that was a legitimate amendment. So I would ask if there's somebody could move that, please. Councillor Watton, questions or comments on that amendment?
Sorry, Madam Chair. Was that 37 or 38?
38.
38, okay. And can you reread it again?
It would read official information related to decisions and resolutions of council, its boards, or committees.
Oh, that's fine.
Okay. Councillor Kett, did you have a question?
Yes, I couldn't vote for that. That's, maybe most of the committees will appreciate that, but I know some of them won't. So I won't vote for that. I think this is the way it's been, and it's good the way it is.
This has to do with press releases coming out?
I understand what it
Okay,
is.
thank you. Is there any other questions or comments on that? All those in favor of that amendment? That's tied. No. I didn't see, I can vote. 3-2. 3-2. That's carried. Okay, on page 32 is number 11. 32 of the agenda. Number 11, and it's also item number 40. So this would read, it's cooperation. A member shall cooperate in every way possible with the Integrity Commissioner and shall not obstruct or influence in any investigation of a complaint and the enforcement of the Code of Conduct. So that's item 11 and number 40. Is there somebody that would like to move that? Councillor Watton, would you take that as a friendly amendment? Page 32, item number 11, and it's also number 40. Page 32 of the agenda. Again, I spoke to the clerk today who suggested it was inappropriate. Sorry, maybe I've got the wrong one.
Page 32, number 11.
32, number 11. I'm sorry. So the motion would read, a member shall cooperate in every way possible with the Integrity Commissioner without obstruction or influence in any investigation of a complaint and the enforcement of the Code of Conduct. Councillor Watton, will you accept that as a friendly amendment? Yeah. Councillor Back, you had a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Through the chair. I don't understand that. I don't know how anyone could obstruct an Integrity Commissioner. I don't understand how that could even be had. I don't understand how anyone could obstruct an Integrity Commissioner from doing their job. Even if they refused to participate, the investigation still continues. How do you obstruct?
By not participating or not giving over evidence.
But the investigation would still continue. It would just be to their detriment.
But it wouldn't be thorough enough because there has been an obstruction.
But maybe it's the wording that I'm having difficulty with, because I don't understand how, with the obstruction, I don't understand the obstruction part. If a person can choose, we live in a free democracy, if a person has an Integrity Commission complaint against them, if they chose to do nothing, it doesn't take the complaint away, and so then they just don't have a defense. It sways to the complainant's side, so to speak, so I don't understand how one can obstruct an officer of an Integrity Commission. Obstruction of to me, it's a very wordy, it's a loaded word. Obstruction of justice almost sounds like a criminal offense. I'm not comfortable with that.
Okay, well, it is in my reference to number 40. I've found it, or the clerk found it for me, and it's on page 27, and it does say obstruct there, so it's just to keep it consistent.
Then I will ask the clerk how one can obstruct. If one chooses to not participate, so to speak, to me, obstruction means that you're trying to intimidate, or you're trying to change the course of an investigation by using influence. That's, to me, obstruction of justice. Just saying that I'm not going to make a defense for myself is not an obstruction. It's a choice.
Could you explain? Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to council. I believe that you're just trying to be consistent within the document, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Section 40 speaks about not obstructing the Integrity Commissioner. I don't have any specific examples of obstructing an Integrity Commissioner, but it should be stated in there that regardless of that, you shouldn't try to obstruct their investigation in any way. So if there's no, I mean, it's just to be consistent within the document. It does say it in Section 40 to not obstruct. This is just to be consistent with the Section 11 to not obstruct the Integrity Commissioner. Again, I don't have any specific examples of obstructing, but it's just that you shouldn't.
Through the chair, may I ask then that if we don't have an example of what obstruction is, that we're not voting on that word? I'm not comfortable with it being in Section 40 either. To me, obstruction of justice almost comes to a criminal aspect. I don't like the word.
Not necessarily, but the motion is on the floor. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Catt.
Thank you. Yes, I have a question about it. I don't really agree with the changes, but I would like to have a member, when requested, shall cooperate in every way possible with the Integrity Commissioner. When not requested, they can not do anything.
Then that's another amendment, Councillor Catt. So just to this particular amendment. There are any other questions or comments? It's a friendly amendment, so, pardon? It's part of the main motion, so. Are there any other amendments or questions or comments? Okay. So the recommendation is that to report CRP 2017-40 Code of Conduct for Members of Council be received, and that the Code of Conduct for Members of Council's bylaw included as Attachment 1 to Report Corp 2017-040 be approved and brought forward for adoption with the amendments, recommendation number 3, Section 9A. Would you like to read those amendments, please, Mr. Clerk?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So the resolution reads that the report CRP 2017-040 Code of Conduct for Members of Council be received, that the time frame for response to an Integrity Commissioner's investigation, Section 9A and B, be changed from 10 business days to 15 business days, that Section 38, the following column be added, that its boards and all committees be added to Section 38, and that and shall not obstruct or influence be added to Section 11, and that the Code of Conduct for Members of Council bylaw, as amended, included as Attachment 1 to report CRP 2017-40, be approved and brought forward for adoption. I got them all?
Yes, I think so. Councillor Back.
Thank you. Through the chair, why are we not voting on those two amendments, Section 38 and Section 11, separately as mine was?
It was accepted as a friendly amendment.
Was there not another amendment that was requested?
Did you have another, did you have another amendment?
Yes, as I said before, when requested. In number 11, a member, when requested, shall cooperate in every way.
Any questions or comments on that? Would you accept that as a friendly amendment, Councillor Watton? Any questions or comments on that friendly amendment? Okay, going back to the main motion. You've added that friendly amendment, Mr. Clerk. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Clerk, for all your hard work on this one. That's a tremendous amount of work. So the next item is the procedural bylaw. I already turned the page. There it is. Procedural bylaw. That was pulled by...
You.
You pulled it, Councillor Somerville?
No, you did.
There it is, okay. Okay. Sorry, all these papers. Betty, I'm sorry, Councillor Somerville.
Did I?
You've moved it? Did you want to pull it? Have any questions or comments on it?
Hold it. There was a couple of questions. Section 4-.1, on page 39.
Page 38?
9.
39?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Council may appoint one of its members as an alternative member to the upper tier council. We've never done that. I think that's a great idea. And so I think it should not say may appoint. I think that's the succession. I think it should be appoint. We've never appointed anyone to go into upper tier.
Theo, did you have a comment on that?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to the council. That's actually new. So that was one of the changes that was brought in by Bill 68, to have an alternate member, the option for an alternate member. So essentially, council has the choice whether to appoint an alternate member or not. However, I do know that the Durham Region has put forward a policy around this matter. So before appointing anyone, I would suggest maybe just having a read of that policy. It might be interesting for anyone considering that they may want to be the alternate member. They can certainly advise the mayor and regional councillor. But I would suggest maybe just looking at the regional policy before doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Now, that brings up another question then. If you're going to appoint an alternative member, then that alternative member is going to have to be paid to go to the regional council. So are we going to add that into the operating budget?
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through the council. Good question. I have seen a draft of the policy, the region's policy. It doesn't provide any remuneration. It provides mileage only for the alternate member. So that's why I suggest that it might be wise to review that policy first before appointing anyone. That policy, by the way, has not been approved by Regional Council. I believe it's on the agenda for this Wednesday, but it hasn't been approved yet. But I understand that there is no remuneration aside from mileage, so it might be worth just having a read before appointing.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. So leave the may in. I was going to have it extracted, but I think it's probably a good idea now.
It's just an enabler if we choose to do it. So.
Just leave it in. My other question was on page, I think 65 still goes into this one. And I've always been confused. It's easy to confuse me, but especially when you're learning the ropes of this. It's a tie vote. It's 3-3 vote. And now it says here, any motion... I'm sorry, on page 39, it says tie vote 10.37. Any motion that receives a tie vote shall be deemed to have been decided in the negative. I thought the mayor always broke the tie. Is this another new one?
Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through the council. No, this is not new. This has been in the procedure bylaw, and that is a normal part of any procedure bylaw. The mayor always votes. So it's only in a case, well, not like today, but if it was someone was absent. Say Councillor Guido was absent today and there was only 6 members. So if the vote was 3-3 in that situation, then it's decided in the negative. So because you have a 7-member council, if everybody is here, that section will never be used.
Okay, that's where the trick is. All right, now I understand that. Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Counselor Kett, you had a question earlier.
Thank you. 2.5. Mandatory appointment of an integrity commissioner to investigate. My question was, has the integrity commissioner looked over this?
The procedural bylaw?
Yes.
Mr. Clerk? 2.5, that's on,
Page 42.
thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to Council. The Integrity Commissioner has no role over the procedural bylaw, so no. The Integrity Commissioner does not review our procedural bylaw, nor would that be normal practice.
I guess my question is that he's mentioned in here, even if he did look at this, because I believe he's got no authority over the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act.
Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to Council. At present, no, but as of March 1, he will. That's, again, is one of the changes within Bill 68, that they are requesting, that is being proclaimed as of March 1, 2019. So essentially doesn't apply to this term, but the new term it will apply to, yes.
Anything else?
Yes? Just be a second. Just at page 49, 4.9, it says members of council appointed to a liaison for each advisory committee or other board authority are required to attend meetings?
Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, they're required to attend meetings.
Page 50, 5.10. Okay, it says 24 hours notice required by section 5.9 may be waived in the case of an emergency, as may be determined by the mayor, his or her alternate. I think the CAO should be taken out.
I got page 50 and I don't see that one. 510. Okay. Maybe waived in the case of emergency, maybe. Mr. Clerk? Is it just a question, or do you...
No, it's a statement.
Did you want to make an amendment then?
I would like to amend it to have the, or the CAO taken out.
And could you have some background on the reason for your amendment?
Yes, this is a council meeting, and I believe that the mayor and or his alternate should be the ones that make a decision for that.
Any other comments or questions on that amendment? Who made this motion? Councillor Somerville. Do you accept that as a friendly amendment? Yes. Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through the Council. I would strongly recommend against removing that, simply because in the case of the mayor and deputy mayor not being available, then we don't have any other backup to call a special meeting. And again, this is an emergency that would have to be declared as well. So I would strongly recommend against that, because you're just limiting the ability to call a special meeting in the event of an emergency. And if, for instance, the mayor and deputy mayor happen to be out of the country on holidays when an emergency happens, you need someone here to be able to call a special meeting in that event. So I would strongly recommend against changing that.
But we also have everyone else as an alternate, and if there isn't as many, enough for a quorum, there's no sense having an emergency meeting. As in today, there's an alternate to take over the mayor's position. Right? So his or her alternate would be, it's already documented.
Councillor Somerville, this given what the clerk has mentioned, do you still want to accept this as a friendly amendment?
This is my day of decisions. I will never sign all these.
Are you sorry you made the motion?
Because I don't think alternatives, and it should have actually been explained by Mr. Clerk first. And after he explained it, it does make sense, and I don't know if I'd want the alternative on my shoulders if I was acting as the alternative mayor. So I think I will not accept that, and I will leave it the way it is.
Okay, it's a formal amendment. Mr. Clerk?
And if I may add, like, that section is going to be probably never used, just an FYI. It is in there in the case of an emergency, but I do believe that it will likely never be used, but I think it's important to have it there, because we don't want to be scrambling to try and call a meeting if there is an emergency. So that's just my point. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Back, on this amendment, you had your hand up? No? Okay. Councillor Cat?
Is there an explanation of what emergency is in the...
Mr. Clerk?
If I lose this page, I'll be another 10 minutes trying to find it.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to Council. I do believe it is just, I'll just have to look it up.
We'll move on and then we'll get back to you, okay? So, anybody else on this amendment? Okay, let's go back to questions on the report itself and the motion.
Yeah, I haven't finished.
I know, he's looking it up.
No, but I mean, I still have a lot of other ones that we can finish here.
Well, you're on this was just on that amendment.
Oh, okay.
I'll put you back on the list. Councillor Back.
Thank you. Through the chair, on page 39, it's also a question about the alternative member for the upper tier. What would happen in the case, say, in the unfortunate event that the regional chair, our regional councillor, or our mayor was away from our upper tier council to be able to attend for a set amount of time? Maybe something to consider when regional, this goes on the floor at the regional to debate, to say, in the unfortunate event that either the mayor or the regional councillor were to be ill and not be able to do their duties for a matter of months, and an alternative took over, I think I'd have a hard time, and I think everybody else here would have a hard time if they then took that role and were not paid for that. It just got mileage. So it's something to consider. Perhaps if it's an odd 1 or 2 times, fine, but they should consider that when, if an alternative, in a sense, takes the role of that person, it could even be for the duration of a term, that they then are remunerated. They should really look at that.
I'll ask the clerk if leave of absence comes in play here.
In this situation, thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to Council. In this situation, this is a policy put forward at regional council. So their policy for an alternate member is mileage be reimbursed, and that's it. That's the way it is right now. Like I said, it hasn't been approved by regional council yet. So it doesn't come into play because this is a separate policy with regards to alternate members. So, again, it's not been approved yet, but it's probably a good point to discuss.
I'll bring that up at Regional Council. Councillor Watton?
Thank you. I have just a couple of questions. On page 42, it references that mandatory requirement on section 2.5, and that the adoption of new mandatory policies, including the manner in which the municipality will preserve its tree canopy and natural vegetation. I know, Mr. Clerk, that you replied to my email that this was indeed one of the mandatory policies, but my question is, should it be in this procedural bylaw or report? Only that Bill 68 refers to a lot of other things as well, and I don't see them referenced. So I was just wondering if it should be contained in this one, or if it should be saved for our planning when or other Bill 68 changes happening, or...
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to Council. You're absolutely right. This is just one of those, this is part of my report that talks about Bill 68 more than the procedure bylaw. So I did include it in there. It's not something that would go in the procedure bylaw, so you're right. It's not something that would go there. It would be captured elsewhere. But it was something that I just, as a mandatory policy that will need to be approved as of March 1, 2019, I did include it just more for information, not specific to the procedure bylaw. So yes, you are correct.
Are you suggesting, Mr. Clerk, that we could take this out and put it in a parking lot for the planner? Is that a friendly amendment? This is the report. Okay, all right, it's just a report, so there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Madam Chair. Yeah, just to clarify, it's not in the procedure bylaw. It's not suggested in there anywhere. It's just in my report, just for information.
I just wanted clarity. If I may, Madam Chair, I just have, on page 53, the PCA meeting agendas, special meeting agendas, and actually page 52 as well. I'm just wondering if we could change or split the way the presentations, delegations, and so on are, so that we ensure that our delegations and our public things come prior to our staff reports. I think we need to be considerate of their time, and some of our staff reports going to be important to us. They're not important to the public, perhaps, and to sit through several which have occurred in, not so long ago. I think we need to be more considerate of their time as well. So if we could somehow change that order, and I'd like to make an amendment to, or if necessary, make that amendment to this.
Okay, Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, and through you to Council. That's exactly the intent of putting these two together, was to allow basically myself as the clerk to decide whether delegations should go through first or presentations should go first. Having them split meant that I ordered the agenda, well, as you see today, presentations is first and then delegations. So putting them together, it simply allows the clerk to, yes, if there's a delegation from a member of the public, I'll definitely be putting them first. The point of putting them together is presentations, again, if it's someone coming to speak, a delegation is coming to speak about something that's being presented, we'd likely want to have the staff member go first, sort of lay out what their report is about, and then have the delegation speak to it. So it's for that purpose that you're asking for, is that if the delegations not related, like they are today, to any presentation or anything matter on the agenda, then we simply would put them first. So that is the purpose.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Kett?
Thank you, Mayor. Page 55, 712. I'd just like a little clarification from the clerk on that. Says that the members shall not take part in the discussion or vote on the matter. I understand they can't vote on the matter, but I was under the impression that they could be in the discussion. So I'd like that first of all from the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Council. It's always been like that. Under no circumstances can a member, if they have a pecuniary interest, influence the vote, which means you cannot be a part of the discussion. The best practices is for actually the member to leave council chambers. That is not something that's within this procedure bylaw, but that is best practice that I've seen previously.
I understand that's the practices, but on the Conflict of Interest Act, it actually says the opposite. So I just wanted a clarification here on this. And also I want a clarification on the fact that I believe in the new rules that you have to make a documented declaration as well?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through to council. I'd like to know what section in the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act that says that, because I would like to correct it if that is the case.
I'm not really sure.
Okay.
I'm not really, I'm just saying that these are things that I've read in the past, and I mean, I could be wrong. I haven't
Okay, no,
before.
and if you could give me the section, then I can certainly speak to that better. But to your other point about the written declaration, that again is part of the Bill 68 changes, effective March 1, 2019. So that was one that I decided that we just allow council to continue the same as they have for the past 3 years, essentially. Didn't think that needed to be implemented right now, and that's the position of the province too, is allow this term of council to continue operating as they always have, and bring some of these things in after the new term of council. So that's something that will be implemented as of March 1, 2019 for the new term. I didn't see it necessarily now, but if council wants to add that, I'm all for it.
Like I say, I can only, that's just what I've read in the past.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have quite a few more. On page 59, 8.4, it says delegate duties to the deputy mayor or acting mayor, or alternate, whichever's.
Was there a question, or?
No, I would like that inserted.
Or alternate, you're saying?
Or alternate.
This motion is on the floor, right? So, okay. Are you making that as an amendment?
Yes, I would like, yes.
Okay, well, let's go through the process and...
U.S. Mr. Clerk, could you give a clarification, please?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor, to the council. I have no objection to that, so if you'd like to add or alternate, I have no objection to that for sure.
Then I will take the friendly amendment.
Okay, accepted as a friendly amendment. Thank you. Carry on, Councillor Catt.
So this is on attachment 1 to the bylaw.
Do you have a page number?
Sorry, 67.
Okay.
The fourth arrow down. To consider and recommend to council the annual downtown Port Perry BIA budget through the corporate services component. I believe through the Municipal Act, the BIA has to present the budget to council. So I would,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through council. Everything that goes through GPNA PCA comes through council, so it has to come through council. Nothing is approved at the committee level. So regardless of whether this comes to GPNA or council, it still comes to council one way or the other.
sorry, I didn't understand where you were going with that.
Councillor Catt was just referring to the corporate services component of it? On the fourth bullet? Is that what you were asking?
Well, basically, what I'm saying is that in the Municipal Act, it says that the BIA has to present to council. No, here, what it says is to consider and recommend to council. So what it's saying is the director and the CAO will consider and recommend to council, which
Thank you,
Does it say
Mr.
that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through the council. No, that's not what it says. It says that the committee, GP&A, and the same with PCNA, will consider and recommend to council. So that's what a committee does, is it recommends things to council. So when the presentation is brought forward to the GP&A meeting, committee makes a recommendation, but it's just a recommendation to council. So once you're sitting as council, then you decide on those recommendations from GP&A and PCNA. So it's, to consider recommend is the actions of the GPA committee. Same with PCA committee.
Yeah, I'm still very confused on what you just said to me, because what I'm seeing is, in accordance with the above, right, to consider all reports from staff as reviewed, easy for me to speak, as reviewed by the applicable director and CAO in respect of the following.
Just see if I can, through you, Mr. Mayor, if I might be able to help. This portion of the policy refers to the matters that would come through the General Purpose and Administration Committee. So they've defined what that purpose of that committee is, and under that committee, that's where the BIA budget would eventually come through. So it would come through to this committee, and then council would, well, the committee of the whole would deal with it and make recommendations to council. That's really what this is saying. It's the form of which that budget would come through, and that's what all these little arrows speak to, are the matters that would come forward to this committee.
If I may, to Councillor Kett, I think it's just hard to grasp the idea because we're a small council, but just say, for instance, City of Toronto, where the total amount of councillors sit in a council meeting, but only a set amount sit on a committee. So there may, I don't even know how many councillors there are in Toronto, but just say if there's 130 councillors in Toronto, 30 may be in the GP&A committee, and they're voting on that, and then bringing it back to council as a whole, so it's two entities, sort of, it's hard here because it's abstract, because we're 7 and 7, we're the same people, but in other bigger municipalities, there's not all members of council sit on the GPA committee. It's not staff that are approving things.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I mean...
Okay, next, Councillor Kett. Any more?
That'll be fine.
Okay.
That was good. That got rid of about 10.
All right, any other questions from council? All right, so let's just have it read back, Mr. Clerk, the motion that was on the floor plus the addition. Can you read the section number there?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That report, CORP 2017-39, Procedure Bylaw and Bill 68 update be received, and that Section 8.4 or alternate be added, and that the Procedure Bylaw, as amended, included as Attachment 1 to report, CORP 2017-39, be approved and brought forward for adoption.
Any questions? All right, all those in favor? Carried. Next item that was pulled. Looks like everything was pulled on the agenda. Looking at the will of council to, if you want to take a short recess?
Thank you.
Yes? Okay, 5-minute recess. Give everybody a stretch, get some blood circulating. Okay. Okay, let's continue on with the agenda. On item 10.2.3, multi-year accessible plan, Councillor Somerville has pulled that. Councillor Somerville's moved the recommendation, but with also the addition that staff investigate including in the 2018 operating budget a township-issued grant for building owners to install accessible stair lifts within their building. Councilor Somerville, did you want to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I put this in because I've been approached by the occupational therapists a couple of times that work in the community, and a lot of the elderly and disabled, which can be your elderly people, most of them, have bad hips or bad knees, and they live in low housing, which oftentimes you'll find them living above a store, or they live in the house that one on John Street that is the old hospital, where there is 3 people who live in that house that are disabled. No, actually not one, but because there's a younger guy that lives upstairs with his dog in the attic. But there's 3 of them, and they have to go up the stairs. One lady is 87, and she has a really bad hip. Another gentleman who's 70 and is a no trucker and just pretty rubby-dub looking guy, and in the summertime he actually took a tumble down the stairs, fell totally backwards as he was going up the stairs, and a lot of the times the landlords, they either won't or can't afford to put in, and neither can the residents who live in the apartments, neither can they afford it, because they're only paying like $500 and $600 and $700 a month. They have no money. So I would like to see a grant being put together for the municipality, and the owners of the buildings, if they wish to apply for the grant, and I would gladly sit on this committee, and have have an OT sit on this, occupational therapist as well, sitting on this committee, where they can apply for this loan, because stair lifts are only about $2,500, $3,000, and where they can apply for this loan, and then we can take a look at what the people who live in their homes are, if their mini-mental or their cognitive functionings are not good enough, but yet not high enough, but yet they are capable of living on their own, and their abilities to take these stairs is just at a little bit of a safety issue. I would like to see this started in our municipality. And I don't want it to be big. I only want maybe, I don't know, we can make it $10,000 or $12,000, and that would allow a couple or 3 people to apply for this. And if they are accepted to go into this, then they can begin the process of getting a stair lift. And I think for the safety of our residents and for the safety of the owners as well, to avoid having a lawsuit on them. I think this is a good idea, just to see how it works, and we can do it as maybe just give it a try and see how it goes, or we can put it in. We have money in our capital budget or in our operational budget that I think we could use, or we can use our CEF for this one too. And I think that it would be a great idea for our elderly and for our disabled.
Okay, questions to the report or Councilor Somerville's motion? Councilor Drew.
Have that repeated,
The amendment was, was moved with this in it. The staff investigate, including in the 2018 operating budget, a township-issued grant for building owners to install accessible stair lifts within their building. I have a few questions that follow up after that. I guess, did you have questions, or you want me to just, because it's part of that?
My concern was it a fait accompli, or was it an investigation, so
Yeah, investigate, yeah. And just, I guess I'll just, a couple of councilors are reading that extra part, that the question I had there, just to make it clear, is it residential only, or is residential commercial?
Oh, no, it'd be residential and commercial, because it would be above stores as well.
All right, and the other thing would be, a grant that you'd mentioned there to just to help with the investigation process, to look at options like 100%, 50%, like a C
Correct.
grant? Okay, and then there is a tax credit in the, for mobility issues with the,
They've never allowed the stair lifts to be put on the tax, I don't think, to get a certain amount back.
There's a tax credit, but for making somebody's home more accessible. However, those, to qualify, they have to have been accepted on disability tax credit form, so it doesn't help with, that's why I was asking about commercial. It doesn't help with commercial because the commercial owner wouldn't have it in order to install that. So much like the program that was done with the ramps out on the front of the RBC Bank and in front of some other ones that were done, I don't know what program that was under. That was a long
That
time
would be
ago.
probably under an accessibility program, but they don't allow, this is a federal grant, that's a federal grant that you're talking about, and they won't, no, that's provincial, sorry, that's a provincial grant, and no, they only allow you to fix up your home.
So you're asking basically staff to look into this as a potential opportunity. Okay, questions from council? Councilor Watt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just, I think it's a very good idea to investigate it, but I think we have to be very careful for building owners in that we could be opening ourselves to supplying all kinds of things through this grant. So I don't know that, I'm just suggesting maybe it shouldn't be limited, but I think it should also go to the Accessibility Committee for consideration and for their comments. But for example, you might have to, I think if we do the stair lifts, then we may be now doing the walkways into the house and things like that as well. And I don't know if that's your intent, Councillor Somerville, but I do think, and I'm sure that when staff investigate, they'll take those things into consideration, but that is a concern I have, although I do believe that it's a great idea, and I would support it, but I do hope that it is bigger than just the stair lifts.
Councilor Kett? Okay, Councilor
I'll just answer that. Actually, I think that ramps into houses, they are provided by the government, that the chairlifts are not. I'm pretty sure ramps are. A certain amount is paid by the government.
And that could be part of the investigation that comes back with that. Councilor Kett?
Thank you, Mayor. To Councillor Somerville, I just would wonder if that could be just added on to the accessibility committee that we currently have to save on our expenses. It could be, they could be actually dispersing the grant if it comes to that, but it might be just to have them as part of it, because I'm sure they communicate with a lot of the people in the neighborhood.
And I think just from talking to staff, that part of that staff investigating would be to communicate with the accessibility community, our committee, as well as the grants committee too, to have wholesome reporting back investigation on it. Councillor Drew, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, to that point, I'm just wondering if we're kind of bypassing the accessibility committee in the first place. Have they ever discussed this, or maybe they have some thoughts on it, or how it could work, and maybe it should go to the accessibility committee first, and then come back with their recommendations, and if it's to go to staff to investigate further, then so be it.
And just speaking with staff, that could be part of the staff investigation where that it is directed to go to the accessibility, so that they're brought into loop right at the beginning. So, Councillor Squatton?
I was just going to suggest that Councillor Somerville come to the accessibility and explain the whys and wherefores when the time comes.
I'd be delighted.
Okay. Other questions from council? Clarifications on the report? Anything? All right. So, as amended, it's left staff to investigate, including in the 2018 operating budget, township issued grant for building owners to install accessible stair lifts within their building. Just to be clear, it's an investigation only, and it'll report back to council, so it's not a financial commitment at this stage. Councillor Watton?
I'm just wondering if staff have time to investigate that before presenting the 2018 operating budget.
Good question. I can almost give you the answer now, but
I think that it would go through corporate communications, or corporate services, initially.
rally to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Madam Treasurer. I'm not sure if, to get it to the Accessibility Committee, we'd have to look at their schedule as well. We'd want to look at the Grants Committee schedule as well. So if it is...
if I may, the Grants Committee only allows like $500. That would be a trivial amount, I think.
Yeah. Sorry, and through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, what I was envisioning, again, I heard about this motion from Councillor Somerville about 30 minutes before the meeting, but what I had envisioned is that the $10,000 or $12,000 that Councillor Somerville is speaking to would then be maybe not given, but given to the Grants Committee or the Accessibility Committee to then give out as grants like they do with the $500. So again, that was just a very, very preliminary thought. I just was made aware of this, but in terms of making the 2018 operating budget, it's going to be very, very tight.
Maybe in conjunction with the Accessibility Committee, right? Because they have the knowledge of that. January?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Councillor Somerville, the next meetings for those committees are until January, so I think the investigation can start, but it might be something that would be, well, it won't make the time when we're presented the budget, so. It could still be, look, the process can happen, I just think that we need to leave that more open-ended on the timing. Okay. So, having said that, to investigate, how about we just take away the, including the 2018 operating budget, investigate a township-issued grant. All right. Any other questions on that? All right, seeing none. All those in favor? Carried. Good. Next, 10.2.4, pulled by Councillor Drew. This is on the fitness, is it? Yes,
This is
on
the
the
summer
fitness.
fitness.
Are you moving the recommendation?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thanks.
And I just want to thank Manager Belfry for coming through with this. It's been a long time coming. Certainly appreciate it. The pictures look pretty good. I'm really looking forward to that. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Watton?
And once again, I do believe it should be referred to the Accessibility Committee to have an opportunity to speak to it. I did send it to both of them, but both the Vice Chair and the Chair for comment, but they were unable to see the pictures clearly. And I know that the AODA have an expectation with new rules and redevelopment. So I think prior to approving it should go to the Accessibility Committee for comment. Personally, I didn't see the accessibility pieces in the photos that were supplied in the report. So if I could, I'd like to add in the recommendations that it goes forward to the Accessibility Committee, or at least to, rather than hold it up, for comment from the Chair and the Vice Chair of the Accessibility Committee prior to accepting the I don't know if that works, but...
So as you said about not holding it up, but making sure they have the opportunity to comment on it, make sure that it's not installed. But I guess part of this is, when is the install date expected?
To the Mayor, the install date is expected next spring, so nothing will be going in. Like, first it'll have to be the concrete foundations that'll have to be put in. So each unit does have, I believe, 2 accessible pieces within it. It was not every unit is accessible. That wasn't the full scope of the project, but we asked that the areas have a few accessible in there. Like, I know one off the top of my head is the Tai Chi unit or the hand bike unit are both accessible, so.
And Mr. Mayor, thank you. If I may add something, if this motion is approved as printed right now with the approval, if the chair and vice chair can get comment by the December 18 council meeting, then we could add those comments at the time of the approval of this at the council meeting. Just an option I thought I'd suggest.
Great idea. I'll ask them to do that.
So, Councillor Drew, are you accepting that as a friendly to the, so, Mr. Clerk, you've got that captured, do you?
Yep.
Okay. Other questions from council? Councillor Kett?
Thank you, Mayor. Greg, the 17,000, was that a new amount that came from the Rotary?
Through the mayor, Councillor, we've known about it for about 6 months, I would say, so.
And it was, is that over and above the 17 that they were gonna donate to the trails?
To the mayor, the councillor, that's the same amount. It's because the location had changed from, originally we were looking at the waterfront trail there, but after monitoring extremely wet summer season in there and realizing that putting this in there may not be in our best interest, we moved it over to Birdseye, and I had spoken with the Rotary Club about that, and they agreed that that's fine with them, and they'll still pay for the basis to go over to the Birdseye Park area.
Okay, did they send that in writing, or, because I just remember it was just for renovations to the other park.
I'm told by the Rotary Club the check's ready whenever we want it, so.
Okay, and that was, in the beginning, wasn't the budget 35,000?
Through the mayor, the councillor, no, it was 35,000 from Parks Reserve and 35,000 from, development charges, so.
Thank you.
Okay, just to follow up on that, you said it was investigated, for, saturated soils, et cetera. Is these spots here, I know further up in Birdseye Park, it's pretty wet in the spring. Were these monitored too, to make sure there weren't gonna be issues?
To the mayor, yes, they're monitored. We watched those areas, and they're fairly elevated there, and they're dry, so probably some fill under there, but we should be okay.
All right, I just wanted to follow up, since we have the map up there of the attachment that has the 3 green elliptical ovals there. Was there any thought about the path to get to these? Because if it's grass, then if somebody needs accessible access to them, how are they to get there? And is there still time to investigate that as some connecting, I don't know if it's an asphalt or something?
To the mayor, those areas are just preliminary areas that we've picked out within there. Like, the equipment could move closer together, and we are going to look at possibilities of trails in there, but they're not, those were just given as examples of where to put the playground equipment. At the end of the day, it's our final decision where exactly they're gonna go, so we're gonna move them as close to being accessible as possible. Hopefully we'll be able to get some trails in there and get them all interconnected. So we're trying to develop a program where they're not too far apart, so people can move between them, and they can also tie into the Birdseye Pool programming for our Aquafit programs, where participants will be able to go out and use the equipment and come back into the pool. So a lot of it will be in that area and fairly close together.
I think it's fantastic to have this addition for the township, for the residents, but I just, maybe when they're commenting from the accessibility committee, if they, probably they will comment on that too, so just so that we're making sure that even if it's in the longer term plan, that there will be a plan to try and connect it, even if there's one that's connected and the other two are down the road. I just was trying to think of getting in front of that before they're built, and then somebody complains that they can't get out to use them, so.
When we put out the RFP, I think we had proposed 3 areas, not expecting to get 3 areas back, so we were pretty happy when we got equipment filled up with that amount of equipment in 3 areas for that. So as I said, those were preliminary, so we may ask them to merge some things closer together, just because it is such a large amount of equipment now, and we're pretty happy with the bid that came in.
So, if I recall, when it was brought forward before in the budget, it was to go along the trail, and that was going to be like trail items. So the trail, there is you know, people do walk around that, and I don't know where
Yeah.
that fits in the official
Yeah,
trail.
we had, through the process, staff, myself and staff, we scouted out other locations down at Hayden Shore, down in Whitby, and we went over to Elgin Park over in Uxbridge where they put in the trails, and the trail one seemed to be fairly, in Elgin Park, dispersed out, and we didn't know how much impact they would get by just having one piece of equipment move along like that, and we liked the Hayden Shore model, so we sort of gravitated towards that, and then putting in Birdseye just gave us that much closer, even close to the library too, for more users to get out and use that from the library, and so.
The only other comment I had, and then I'll just put it back up to council, was just the one in front of the library, because there's a lot of windows there. It might be a concern. Some people, I know if you ever went to the gym, and the people don't want to be a spectacle, and if that becomes like a viewing platform from people inside and they see you on these trails, it's great to get exposure, but some people might not use them, might find that they're using ones that are further away from the line of sight, so. Councillor Somerville?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A question about the warranty. They have a 10-year warranty on them, I see. What happens after 10 years? Are they expensive to repair or to replace? They won't be here.
Through the mayor to councillor, I guess with any equipment that we install, we do have to replace it. We know we've had these discussions with other pieces of equipment in the past. We are getting a maintenance kit with it, so minor repairs will hopefully be able to be done by staff. With anything, hopefully it lasts 20 years and we don't get into those things, but the standard 10-year, every proposal that came in was a standard 10-year warranty, so I think that's an industry standard, and we just have to deal with that, and I would expect the equipment to be there a lot longer than that, so I don't think we'll have issues, but everything, as I said last year with other equipment, things do break, and we'll fix them, and hopefully everybody enjoys the experience.
Well, yeah, I hope they do too, and the way the weather was last year, it was like roasting hot, and this year, freezing cold with lots of rain, and I'm just wondering how much use these are going to be. If I mean, we're into changing weather all the time.
I get, through the mayor, the councillor, we're hoping it gets a lot of use. I think that was the goal of council when they asked us to put this out, was to find a suitable equipment, and I think we found the equipment. When we put out the RFP, we looked for dynamic use that would allow all different kinds of levels, whether it's seniors, children, people with high fitness levels, accessibility. We looked at all those possibilities. When the proposals came in, we graded them based on that and the innovation that they brought forward. Some proposals didn't provide that. We looked for equipment. We've looked around at the different companies that are supplying the equipment. When we went and inspected the equipment in Whitby and Uxbridge, we looked at the different styles they had. We looked to moving parts, how much wear and tear they could take, whether there were pinch points for people, things like that. So I think with this proposal, we're very happy with the way it's come in and the way the equipment's made, so we're fairly confident we're not going to have those issues. So it's under warranty, and I think once the community gets involved with these pieces of equipment, it's on the waterfront where there's a high turnout of people along there walking the trail system, and I think the goal of the township eventually is to have an interconnecting trail system through there, so this just adds to that fitness component. I think it's a great location with Birdseye Pool there, and with the seniors community very close. We kept that in mind when we proposed the location of the community and the senior center and wanting to be down there, and we hope they take full advantage of that. We've made sure that the equipment in there is suitable. Most of the equipment is suitable for seniors, so we're hoping that people really get in there and enjoy this. I think it's part of a program of getting people out there and getting them with low impact, not at a high cost, getting fit and getting out there. So I think we're going to push it, and we're going to intertwine. The other aspect of this is going to be close to Birdseye Pool, so we're going to develop this into our own program, so and use that with our fitness instructors to help get people fit in the community. So
I think it's a great idea, Craig. I really do. I like the idea, but I'm concerned. I wouldn't want it too far away from each other,
No.
Because then they're not going to go to the next one, or they're not going to use it. And I'm concerned about parking too, because we only have the CIBC, and you know what that parking lot down there in front of the library is like. It's, once you get kids going to Bird's Eye Pool, it's jammed in there, and there's not enough parking to begin with. I'm just wondering whether that we're going to have enough parking.
Through the mayor, Council, I would hope a lot of the people aren't driving to it per se. I hope they're riding their bike down, or they're walking along the waterfront trail and coming along to it. We'll have directional signs, and I hope that they're using it as part of their fitness workout, so they're not just driving there. A lot of people can drive, that would be great. They do that at Hayden Shore, we've seen that, but I hope that people within the Port Perry community are walking around, walking up to it and using it, then going for a run or going for a bike ride after that.
Yeah, but you got people like me who live out in the country.
Yep.
And I'd have to drive in, and I'd have to park, and there's probably a lot of other people out there that would have to drive in and would have to park too. I'm just wondering, one other thought that came to my mind when I was reading this. If you solicited the pickleball and the seniors club and Provost and all the ones that have the seniors in it and made a presentation to them, it might really help it, or ask questionnaires even to see how much they would use it and where they would like it located, and you know, like there's a lot of seniors out there, and just go to that Provost meeting and you're just going to find there's a ton of them. Like that place is packed with seniors, mostly women. But it's a good, you know, that'd be a good place to see, to get the feel of how many people would actually come down and use it too. That's just my idea. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Maybe the next article in the paper will bring attention to it too. Councillor Back.
Thank you. Through the mayor, I had a couple of questions. I'm assuming that this is a galvanized metal of some sort, is it not? And in Whitby and Hayden Shores, they have a rotary outdoor equipment as well, and I mean, the stickers are long faded, but the equipment is there's not even rust on it's a thicker coat of paint as well on top of it. That's been there for at least 10 years. Do you know that when they installed that?
Through the mayor, I do not, but it has been there a while. It's still in really good shape. As you said, stickers are faded, but signage is still there, and they're still in, we use them, so.
Yeah, no, like that's my point. Like the stickers are long sort of gone, but the equipment is in perfect shape. Now, with regards to people riding their bikes to this, are there any bicycle racks nearby?
There would be, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, there wouldn't be any right in that area. There'd be some at the library and some at the pool right now.
Maybe consideration if we come on a little under budget there to put one or two bike racks in there too, and it might actually hint sort of encourage people to use their bikes. And will there be communications to the elementary schools and high schools so that they can incorporate this into their physical education programs perhaps, and introduce the kids so that when summertime comes they'll be more likely to use it because they've been shown properly with their teachers how to use the equipment? And good, it's fantastic. The one in Whitby is fabulous, and I remember, and this is like eons ago when I was little in Ajax, they also had, it wasn't as fancy as metal, I think it was wood, so it's probably a long time rotted, but they had an outdoor fitness circuit, which was well used as well, especially when people were doing the soccer games and whatnot, if you were bored because you weren't on the field. So it's a good thing we finally are getting them. Thanks for your report.
Thank you. Any other questions on this? Okay, Mr. Clerk, can you just read the amended part of it so that we know what was added to the motion?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just the amended portion is that the proposal be forwarded to the Chair and Vice Chair of the Accessibility Advisory Committee for comment prior to final approval.
Okay. All right. All right. Any final questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next item was pulled by Emergency Management Plan, pulled by Councillor Back.
Thank you, through the mayor. And this is just sort of a ad hoc
Councillor Back,
question.
are you moving the motion?
Oh, yes, I'll move it. Let me just find it. Here it is. So it's been something that's weighing on my mind for a while now, and I know this new council had requested it a couple of years back, 2 or 3 years back, with our former chief, and now we have a new chief, and just thought perhaps I would float this question to the new chief, and this sort of seemed like a good time to do it. What are your thoughts about, years ago, township employees who also were volunteer firefighters were able to respond to calls when they were working, if it was safe to do so. So in an instance, if they were doing snow plowing, obviously you wouldn't, but if they were doing other jobs that were not deemed essential or emergency, could leave their position to respond to a call. And I'm just wondering about your thoughts, if you would address, maybe revisit this, because we do have a new chief.
Thank you for the question. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. I love the opportunity of having more volunteers, believe me. Although I would be cautious in responding right now without perhaps doing an impact study as to just saying, yes, let's do it. For instance, if we offer the opportunity to a couple, as an example, operations employees, why can't we offer it to a couple people in finance and perhaps a couple people in the clerk's department? And before you know it, perhaps the business of the corporation is shutting down because we have an emergency. So I believe an impact study would be worthwhile, specifically on how we are built as a corporation, and then what it would mean to us if there was an emergency during a snowstorm, during regular summer business operations, et cetera, et cetera.
Right, thank you, because I think not only would it be good for the people to know that we have that extra coverage, especially during the weekdays, but also you may find that you may have more township employees that would be willing to take up the volunteer firefighting position if they knew that they could indeed serve their town.
Thank you. Through the mayor, again to the councillor. Perhaps if Director Coleman and myself could address this with the rest of the senior management team, then we could perhaps provide you with a response via email or a note.
Or report back to council. It would be lovely. Thank you.
And I think that I was going to suggest that there's senior management meetings that could be discussed there, and then.
To you, Mr. Mayor, maybe to Councillor Back. It has been a matter that has been discussed, and I think that the fire services and the chief have done a great job of recruitment over the last year, and I believe that he met his objective for volunteers and had considerable interest. The matter of involving town staff has been looked at, and I would say if we were having a terrible time recruiting volunteers, might be considered. However, I'd like council to remember that we have very small staff here at the township, and if you're given the opportunity, you might get a large take-up. And right now, when the fire alarm goes, all volunteers go. And if there was a large number of people within the municipality that were volunteers, and they went, our service would be impacted significantly, especially on a regular basis, keeping in mind that we don't really have a shortage of volunteers. And if that was the case, that might be a different matter.
If I may, through the mayor, question to the chief. How is your coverage during the day for the Caesarea station?
Through the mayor to the councillor, I'm hoping in about a week and a half to improve substantially, as 11 of the 15 recruits that we brought on board are for Caesarea. Today, I would suggest extremely poor. And again, I would caution it could be a different view in a week and a half.
Okay, but during the day as well, coverage?
Through the mayor to the council, yes, that's correct.
Okay, because that's my suggestion, because I know coverage in Caesarea is sparse during the day, and if there are current firefighters that are also staff members that could respond, I'm assuming that people that have homes in that area would feel a little bit safer.
So, Councillor Back, I think it's been acknowledged that they could discuss it further, and you know, given that there's a big wave of recruits in there, I'm curious to hear the report back too, so, our update, so. Any other questions on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Next one is pulled and moved by Councillor Somerville, which is the correspondence of Zero Tolerance Town of Ajax. Councillor Somerville?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to endorse this. This is really an important document. That's all.
Any other questions from council on this? I don't know if staff have any concerns with the policy from Ajax. All right. Final call for questions from council. So the motion is moved by Councilor, the correspondence be received and endorsed.
Thank you.
All those in favor? Carried. Next is notice of motion, new business. Councillor Kett.
Thank you, Mayor. I received correspondence from Enbridge. They're wanting a letter from the township, regarding filing leave to construct for the natural gas for the island. And I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention. We're making great strides. So, what they're asking for is a letter of support from the township on that.
Okay. So do you have any further information on that? Just something that we can discuss afterwards. I just saw an email that you flipped me that says about a draft letter that was going to be drafted up. I just...
Is there no attachment on that?
Not on my email, no.
I can read it. You like that?
Well, I just don't know what the ask is here. Is it a council resolution, or is it just a follow-up to the June meeting that was for the support of the grant?
Yeah, we, in June or July, I'm not sure exactly when, but we did endorse their proposal, and accordingly was supposed to have a letter of support to follow it, and I'm not sure that was good.
Okay, Mr. Lohr?
To Mr. Mayor, to Councillor, my understanding through conversation with the Enbridge representative is that they were not in need of the letter, and they would notify us when they were in need of it. And if this is the notification, then we can look at the letter. Staff would like to review the letter. There are some conditions and areas that we need to address in the letter, because as you recall, the letter did require for some tax deferral with respect to the main that was being constructed, and we've had consultation with the region and other municipalities with respect to that, and the letter needs to address that agreement and how that will be done and the conditions associated with it.
So a resolution, which I see a resolution from June didn't spell out the letter of support. So right now, if there was a resolution to have a supporting letter subject to staff reviewing it, especially if it's committing the township on the grant opportunity, then is that what you're looking for, is a resolution?
I don't think that's the timing I'm looking for, because apparently that has to be in this week.
Councillor Watton?
Well, before Councillor Kett said that, I would have suggested, do we all receive a copy of that request for the letter? Or is it just addressed to you, Councillor? Because if we did, I've missed it.
It's actually addressed to Kirsten Wally, the Board of Secretary for the Ontario Energy Board. I was CC'd, so.
So,
Well, I would like to suggest that we don't endorse anything unless we have a formal request asking for the letter, and we don't know what we're endorsing.
This, I'm sorry, the letter is to be sent to Kristen Wally from the mayor, and this is the form letter that's attached.
okay, so what,
Or
if
maybe
we-
not form letter isn't the correct wording. It's a letter that's been drafted.
So, I'm just clarifying this, we had a resolution that was passed in June, supporting and talking about, the offering, so the grants could be submitted in there. So,
Yes.
this is a follow-up piece that is being requested? Because if this has gone to you saying that they need this to be, fulfilled, based on what we've already done in June, then that's what I'm suggesting, is the request gets submitted to staff, and if it is satisfactory that our resolution in June encompassed that, then we already have the resolution on the books. But if it's something outside of that, that's what we're trying to clarify, because we don't have that in front of us, except for you.
Okay.
And like, I just want to clarify, nobody wants to halt anything that's happening with...
Well,
with
exactly,
Gaffney.
and that's exactly the...
So, but I think if it's important and it's timely for this, then this should be something that is sent out with that urgency on it, and if it's...
Well, I think the urgency is in the letter, so I can send that to all, council if you wish, and staff.
So why don't you request Enbridge to send it to staff, and then it could be dealt with
I
expeditiously?
mean, I can send it right now.
Well, if the request is to staff, it should go to staff from Enbridge. And then it may not be held up at all. All right, and then we have, a PCNA meeting the following Monday, and then we have the council meeting the Monday after that, so...
I think the question is, does council have to support it, or can it be just done by the mayor? Since the endorsement was made in June or July, already, it just didn't accompany a letter.
I think that's what I'm saying, is to have, if
Yes.
we've already dealt with it, have it go to staff. If it fits within the parameters of the resolution, and then that's fine. If it's not, then we deal with it next Monday.
We'll do that.
Okay. Any other new business? Okay. Motion to adjourn, moved by Councillor Wadden. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, everybody.